This is Atlas broadcasting from Station Endlight. If you're tuning in, you've made it through another day in our changed world. It's been 47 days since the global blackout plunged us into darkness, and I'm here to shed some light on our situation. For those just joining us, let me recap what we know. On March 3rd, 2026, a massive solar flare struck Earth, overwhelming our power grids and frying most electronic devices. In an instant, our technologically dependent world went dark. No electricity, no internet, no modern communications. Cities fell into chaos, and millions were left struggling to survive without the comforts and necessities of the world we once knew. But here we are, still fighting, still surviving. And that's what today's broadcast is all about: survival and hope. Over the next few hours, we'll cover essential information to help you stay alive, share news from other survivors, and discuss how we can rebuild our world from the ground up. Let's start with our current challenges. Food and clean water are scarce in many areas, especially in former urban centers. Without refrigeration and modern agriculture, our food supply has taken a massive hit. Diseases we thought were long gone are making a comeback due to the breakdown of sanitation systems and medical care. But it's not all doom and gloom. We're adapting. Communities are forming, people are learning to live off the land, and the human spirit of innovation is alive and well. Scientists and engineers are working tirelessly to restore some form of power and communication. We're not giving up. Now, let's dive into some crucial survival tips, starting with the most essential resource: water. In our post-blackout world, you can't simply turn on a tap for clean water. You need to know how to find and purify water to stay alive. First, let's talk about finding water sources. Natural springs are your best bet for clean water, but they're not always easy to find. Rivers, streams, and lakes can be good sources, but be cautious. Stagnant water is more likely to harbor harmful bacteria and parasites. In urban areas, you might find water in unexpected places like water heaters, toilet tanks, not the bowl, and rain barrels. Once you've found water, purification is crucial. Boiling is the most reliable method. Bring water to a rolling boil for at least 1 minute at sea level and 3 minutes at higher altitudes. This will kill most harmful organisms. If you can't boil water, chemical purification is your next best option. Household bleach can be used in an emergency. Add 2 drops of unscented bleach per quart of clear water, or 4 drops if the water is cloudy. Let it stand for 30 minutes before drinking. For those of you who've managed to salvage some technology, water purification tablets are extremely valuable. Use them according to the instructions on the package. If you're in a position to plan ahead, consider obtaining a quality water filter. Ceramic filters can remove most bacteria and protozoa, making water much safer to drink. Remember, never assume water is safe to drink without treatment, even if it looks clean. The risk of waterborne illness in our current situation is too high to take chances. Now let's move on to food. With supply chains disrupted and grocery stores emptied, many of us have had to return to more primitive methods of obtaining food. Foraging for edible plants can supplement your diet, but it's crucial to know what you're doing. Incorrect identification can lead to serious illness or even death. Some common edible plants found in many parts of North America include dandelions. The entire plant is edible, chickweed, lamb's quarters, and purslane. Wild berries like blackberries and raspberries are also good finds. However, be absolutely certain of your identification before eating any wild plant. When in doubt, don't eat it. It's better to be hungry than poisoned. If you're near wooded areas, acorns can be a valuable food source. They require processing to remove tannins, but they're high in nutrients and can be ground into flour. Pine needles can be brewed into a tea rich in vitamin C. For those able to hunt or fish, remember that without refrigeration, you'll need to preserve your catch quickly. Smoking and drying meat are ancient preservation techniques that are serving us well in these times. Salt, if you can find it, is invaluable for preservation. In urban and suburban areas, don't overlook the potential for urban foraging. Many ornamental plants are actually edible. Roses, for example, produce edible hips high in vitamin C. Crab apples, often planted as decorative trees, are safe to eat though they may be tart. As we adapt to this new world, many communities are starting to cultivate gardens. If you have access to seeds, starting a garden can provide a sustainable food source. Focus on calorie-dense crops that are relatively easy to grow, like potatoes, beans, and squash. Leafy greens like kale and spinach grow quickly and provide essential nutrients. In the coming weeks, we'll dive deeper into agricultural techniques suited for our new circumstances. For now, remember that any food production, no matter how small, can make a big difference in your survival. Before we move on to our next topic, I want to emphasize the importance of community in these trying times. No one can survive this alone. If you're in a position to do so, share your knowledge and resources with others. Trade skills and help each other. The more we cooperate, the better our chances of not just surviving, but rebuilding. Now, let's talk about another crucial aspect of survival first aid. In a world without easy access to hospitals and modern medical care, knowing basic first aid can mean the difference between life and death. We'll start with treating common injuries you're likely to encounter. For cuts and scrapes, cleaning the wound is your first priority. Use clean water if available, or an antiseptic solution if you have it. Cover the wound with a clean cloth or bandage to prevent infection. Change the dressing regularly and watch for signs of infection like redness, swelling, or pus. Burns are another common injury. For minor burns, cool the area with clean water for several minutes. Do not use ice, as this can cause further damage. Cover the burn with a clean, dry dressing. For severe burns, seek medical help if possible. In the meantime, do not remove clothing stuck to the burn, and try to prevent shock by laying the person flat and elevating their feet slightly. Sprains and strains can be debilitating in a survival situation. Remember rice rest, ice or cold compress, compression, and elevation. Immobilize the affected area and avoid putting weight on it. If you don't have ice, a cloth soaked in cool water can help reduce swelling. Fractures are more serious and ideally require professional medical attention. However, in our current situation, you may need to improvise. Immobilize the area above and below the suspected fracture. You can create a splint using rigid materials like sticks or boards, patting them with cloth to prevent further injury. Do not attempt to realign bones stick out through the skin, as this can cause severe bleeding and infection. Now, let's move on to recognizing and managing some of the illnesses we're seeing more frequently in our post-blackout world. Without modern sanitation and medical care, diseases we thought were under control are making a comeback. Dysentery has become a major concern. It's characterized by severe diarrhea that may contain blood or mucus, accompanied by fever and abdominal pain. Prevention is key here. Always purify your water, wash your hands frequently if possible, and cook food thoroughly. If you suspect dysentery, the main goal is to prevent dehydration. Drink plenty of purified water, and if available, use oral rehydration solutions. You can make a simple version by mixing 6 level teaspoons of sugar and half a level teaspoon of salt into 1 liter of clean water. Respiratory infections are also on the rise. Common symptoms include cough, fever, and difficulty breathing. Rest is crucial for recovery. If you have access to them, herbs like thyme and oregano can be brewed into teas that may help alleviate symptoms. Honey, if you can find it, can soothe sore throats and may have antibacterial properties. Skin infections are another concern, especially with limited access to clean water for bathing. Keep cuts and scrapes clean and covered. If you notice increasing redness, swelling, or pus, you may be dealing with an infection. Clean the area thoroughly and apply a poultice made from herbs with antimicrobial properties like garlic or calendula, if available. Now, let's talk about improvising medical supplies. Clean cloth can be used for bandages, just make sure to boil it first if possible to sterilize it. In a pinch, certain plants can be used for their medicinal properties. Yarrow, for example, can help stop bleeding when applied to wounds. Plantain leaves can be crushed and applied to insect bites to reduce itching and swelling. For splints, any straight, rigid material can work: tree branches, strips of bark, or even rolled up newspaper if you can find any. Pad these with soft materials to prevent further injury. Maintaining hygiene in our resource-scarce conditions is challenging but crucial. If soap is scarce, wood ash can be used as a substitute for hand washing. Its alkaline nature can help kill bacteria. Pine needles can be boiled to make an antiseptic wash for cleaning wounds. Remember, these are emergency measures. Whenever possible, seek help from those with medical training. And if you have medical skills, please share your knowledge with your community. We're all in this together. Now, let's shift our focus to another critical aspect of survival shelter and security. In our new world, having a safe place to rest and protect yourself from the elements. When it comes to creating secure shelters from available materials, your approach will depend on your environment. In urban areas, existing structures can be fortified. Look for buildings with solid construction, preferably with few ground-level windows. Brick or concrete structures are ideal. If you're in a house, focus on securing entry points. Board up ground floor windows if possible. Create multiple escape routes in case you need to leave quickly. If you have a basement, consider making it your main living area as it's naturally more secure and easier to keep cool in summer and warm in winter. For those in rural areas or wilderness settings, natural shelters can be surprisingly effective. A lean-to shelter can be quickly constructed using fallen trees or branches. If you have a tarp or large piece of cloth, it can be used to create a simple A-frame shelter. In snowy conditions, a snow cave can provide excellent insulation, but be sure to include a ventilation hole to prevent carbon dioxide buildup. Regardless of your shelter type, camouflage can be an important consideration. In urban areas, this might mean covering windows to prevent light from escaping at night. In natural settings, use local vegetation to break up the outline of your shelter. Now, let's talk about fortifying existing structures. Start by assessing all potential entry points: doors, windows, even chimneys or large vents. Reinforce doors with additional locks or barricades. For windows, boards or metal sheets can provide additional security. If you're in a group, consider setting up a watch rotation to keep an eye out for potential threats. Remember, visibility works both ways. While you want to be able to see potential threats approaching, you also don't want to advertise your presence too obviously. Use curtains or coverings that can be easily moved aside for observation. Water collection should be a key consideration in your shelter design. If possible, set up a system to collect and store rainwater. This could be as simple as tarps or other waterproof materials angled to direct water into containers. Now, let's address a topic many of us wish we didn't have to consider: basic self-defense techniques. In our changed world, the sad reality is that not everyone has maintained their humanity. Knowing how to protect yourself and your loved ones is, unfortunately, a necessary skill. First and foremost, awareness is your best defense. Stay alert to your surroundings. If possible, travel in groups. There's safety in numbers. If you must go out alone, let someone know where you're going and when you expect to return. If confronted, your first option should always be to avoid conflict if possible. Be prepared to hand over supplies if threatened. Your life is worth more than any material goods. However, if escape is not possible and you're forced to defend yourself, here are some basic techniques. Use your voice. Yell loudly to attract attention and potentially scare off an attacker. Aim for vulnerable areas like the eyes, nose, throat, and groin. If you have keys or a similar small, hard object, they can be held in your fist to increase the impact of a punch. Remember, the goal in self-defense is to create an opportunity to escape, not to engage in prolonged combat. As soon as you see an opening, run and seek help. For home defense, create obstacles that will slow down potential intruders and give you more time to react. This could be as simple as a pile of empty cans near entry points that will make noise if disturbed. Forming community watch groups can significantly enhance security. Organize shifts to keep watch. Establish communication systems like whistles or signals to alert others of danger, and create plans for how to respond to various threats. Regular drills can help everyone remember what to do in an emergency. Practice evacuations, hiding, and meeting at predetermined safe locations. The more prepared you are, the calmer and more effective you'll be if a real threat emerges. Now, I want to stress that while we need to be prepared for potential threats, it's equally important not to let fear control us. The vast majority of survivors are just like you, decent people trying to make it through these difficult times. Building trust and cooperation within your community will do more for your long-term security than any physical defenses. In fact, let's talk about the importance of community in our new world. No one can survive this alone. If you haven't already, reach out to your neighbors. Pool resources and skills. Maybe one person knows how to hunt, another how to preserve food, and another has medical training. Together, you're much stronger than you are alone. Consider establishing a community garden if you haven't already. Not only does this provide a sustainable food source, but it also creates a project that brings people together, fostering a sense of shared purpose and hope for the future. Set up a system for sharing information. This could be a central bulletin board, regular community meetings, or designated runners to carry news between households. Knowledge is power, especially in our current situation. If you have special skills, share them. Teach others what you know. The more skills each person has, the more resilient your community becomes. And don't underestimate the skills you have to offer. In our new world, everything from gardening to basic carpentry to storytelling has value. Remember, rebuilding society starts with these small communities. The connections we forge now, the systems we put in place to support each other, these are the foundations of our future. As we wrap up this segment on shelter and security, I want to leave you with a thought. Yes, we need to be cautious and prepared in this new world, but don't let fear close you off from others. Our humanity, our ability to come together and support each other, that's our greatest strength. It's what will see us through this dark time and into a brighter future. Stay tuned, listeners. Coming up, we'll be sharing news and community reports from across the region. If you have information to share, find a way to get it to us here at Station and Light. Your insights could save lives. Remember, we're all in this together. This is Atlas, and you're listening to Station and Light, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back, survivors. This is Atlas, continuing our broadcast from Station and Light. We've covered a lot of ground already discussing water purification, food sources, shelter, and security. Now, let's turn our attention to some updates from around the region. We've received reports from a settlement about 50 miles west of our location. They've managed to establish a functioning windmill, providing a small but steady source of electricity. This has allowed them to power a short-range radio, which is how they've made contact with us. They're using the power primarily for a community refrigerator, preserving perishable foods and medicines. It's a small step, but an encouraging one. If any of you have engineering skills, consider looking into wind or water power options for your own communities. From the south, we've heard whispers of a group claiming to represent what's left of the state government. They're reportedly moving from town to town, attempting to reestablish some form of order. However, we don't have confirmation on their legitimacy or intentions. If you encounter anyone claiming government authority, exercise caution. Verify their credentials if possible, and don't blindly follow orders or hand over resources. On a concerning note, there are reports of increased bandit activity along the old interstate highways. These groups are targeting travelers and small settlements, so if you're planning to move locations, stick to less obvious routes and travel in groups whenever possible. Now, let's talk about the weather and its implications for the coming weeks. Our meteorological equipment might be down, but we can still make some predictions based on observations and patterns. We're heading into summer, and it's shaping up to be a hot one. Without air conditioning, heat-related illnesses are going to be a major concern. To combat this, try to do any strenuous work during the cooler parts of the day, early morning or late evening. If you're in an urban area, be cautious about entering large buildings. Without ventilation systems, they can become deadly heat traps. Stay hydrated, even if you don't feel thirsty. If you can, create shaded outdoor areas for your community. A simple canopy can make a big difference. We're also seeing signs that this summer might be drier than usual. This has several implications. First, fire risk will be high. Be extremely cautious with any open flames. Clear areas around your shelters of dry vegetation to create a fire break. If you're in a forested area, have an evacuation plan ready in case of wildfires. The dry conditions also mean we need to be extra mindful of our water usage. Those rain collection systems we talked about earlier, they're going to be crucial. Start thinking now about how to conserve water. Every drop counts. On a more positive note, we've had several reports of successful harvests from community gardens. It seems the lack of industrial pollution is having some beneficial effects on local ecosystems. Many of you are finding that crops are growing faster and yielding more than expected. This is fantastic news, but remember to save some of your harvest as seeds for next season. We can't rely on being able to find commercial seeds anymore. Now, I'd like to share a success story that came in from a listener about 30 miles north of us. Sarah, if you're listening, thank you for sharing your experience. For the rest of you, Sarah and her neighbors have set up a successful aquaponics system. For those unfamiliar, aquaponics combines raising fish with growing plants in water. For the plants, the fish waste plants clean the water for the fish. It's a sustainable system that produces both plant and protein foods. Sarah reports that they started small, with just a few tilapia in a large tank and some floating beds of lettuce and herbs. They've since expanded to include tomatoes, cucumbers, and even some strawberries. The system does require some initial setup and knowledge, but once it's running, it's relatively low maintenance. If any of you have experience with aquaponics or are interested in learning, consider reaching out to nearby communities to share knowledge and resources. This brings me to an important point: the value of skill sharing in our new world. Before the blackout, many of us were specialists focused on one particular job or field. Now, we all need to become generalists. The more skills each of us has, the more resilient our communities become. So, I want to encourage all of you to both teach and learn. If you have knowledge about farming, mechanics, medicine, or any other useful skill, share it with others. And don't be afraid to learn new things. The person who can both fix a generator and dress a wound is invaluable in our new reality. Speaking of valuable skills, let's talk about first aid and health management in our post-blackout world. We touched on this earlier, but it's a topic that bears repeating and expanding upon. First and foremost, prevention is key. Many of the health issues we're seeing could be avoided with proper sanitation and hygiene. I know it's not easy without running water, but do your best to keep yourself and your living areas clean. Wash your hands frequently, especially before handling food or treating wounds. If soap is scarce, ash from your fires can be used as a substitute. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. When it comes to treating injuries, clean water is your best friend. Flush out wounds thoroughly to prevent infection. If you have access to them, antiseptic solutions like iodine or hydrogen peroxide are excellent for cleaning wounds. But if you don't, salt water can also be effective. For larger wounds that need closing, butterfly bandages can be improvised by cutting strips from any clean, adhesive tape. Place them across the wound to hold the edges together. This isn't as effective as proper stitches, but it can help wounds heal with less scarring and lower risk of infection. We're seeing a lot of sprains and strains as people take on physical tasks they're not used to. Remember RICE: rest, ice, or cold compress, compression, and elevation. Even without ice, elevating the injured area and compressing it with a bandage can significantly reduce swelling and pain. Now, let's talk about some of the illnesses we're seeing more frequently. Digestive issues are common, largely due to changes in diet and potential contamination of food and water. If you're experiencing diarrhea, the biggest risk is dehydration. Drink plenty of clean water. If available, drinks with electrolytes are even better. You can make a simple rehydration solution by mixing 6 level teaspoons of sugar and half a level teaspoon of salt into 1 liter of clean water. Respiratory infections are also on the rise. The symptoms are probably familiar: cough, fever, difficulty breathing. Rest is crucial for recovery. If you have access to them, herbs like thyme and oregano can be brewed into teas that may help alleviate symptoms. Honey, if you can find it, can soothe sore throats and may have antibacterial properties. We're also seeing more skin infections, likely due to the combination of increased physical labor and decreased hygiene options. Keep any cuts or scrapes clean and covered. If you notice increasing redness, swelling, or pus, you may be dealing with an infection. Clean the area thoroughly and apply a poultice made from garlic or calendula if you have access to them. Both have antimicrobial properties. Now, I know many of you are concerned about more serious illnesses. Without access to hospitals and modern medications, conditions that were once easily treatable have become much more dangerous. This is why community is so important. If you or someone you know has medical training, your skills are invaluable. Consider setting up a community clinic where people can come for basic treatments and advice. For those managing chronic conditions, I know these times are especially challenging. If you're rationing medications, be as careful and strategic as possible. Some medications can be dangerous if stopped abruptly, so if you have any questions, try to consult with someone with medical knowledge. Remember, mental health is just as important as physical health. The stress and uncertainty of our situation can take a heavy toll. Make time for rest and relaxation, even if it feels unproductive. Maintain social connections as much as possible. Share your feelings with others you trust. We're all in this together, and sometimes just talking about our fears and anxieties can make them feel more manageable. I want to address something that I know is on many of your minds: the future of medical care in our new world. It's true that we've lost access to many modern medical technologies and treatments, but remember, humans have been treating illnesses and injuries for thousands of years before the advent of modern medicine. We're not starting from zero. In fact, we're seeing a resurgence of interest in traditional and herbal medicines. While these shouldn't be seen as replacements for all modern treatments, many do have legitimate medicinal properties. Willow bark, for instance, contains salicin, which is similar to aspirin and can help with pain and fever. Garlic has natural antibiotic properties. Aloe vera can help soothe burns and skin irritations. If you're interested in learning about herbal medicine, proceed with caution. Many plants can be toxic if used incorrectly. Try to find someone with experience to guide you, and always start with small doses to check for any adverse reactions. Looking to the future, we need to focus on preserving and sharing medical knowledge. If you have medical textbooks, guard them carefully. They're invaluable resources. Consider organizing study groups in your community to learn and practice medical skills. The more people who have this knowledge, the more resilient our communities will be. As we continue to adapt to our new reality, it's crucial that we don't lose hope. Yes, we've lost much of the medical infrastructure we once relied on, but we still have our most powerful tools: human ingenuity and the ability to work together. Every day, I hear stories of people finding creative solutions to medical challenges, of communities coming together to care for their sick and injured. This gives me hope for our future. Remember, your health is your most valuable asset in this new world. Take care of yourselves and each other. And if you have medical knowledge or resources to share, please find a way to spread that information. You could quite literally save lives. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing energy and technology in our post-blackout world. If you found innovative ways to generate power or repurpose old tech, we want to hear from you. This is Atlas, reminding you that knowledge is power, especially now. Keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight. This is Atlas, continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a lot of ground already, from water and food to health and community organization. Now, let's turn our attention to a topic that's crucial for our long-term survival and eventual recovery: energy and technology. First, let's talk about the current state of our power infrastructure. As you all know, the massive solar flare that caused this blackout didn't just turn off the lights, it fried most of our electrical systems. Power plants, substations, and even many smaller electronics were rendered useless in an instant. This isn't a simple matter of flipping a switch to turn everything back on. We're essentially starting from scratch. But don't lose hope. Humanity lived without electricity for thousands of years, and we can do it again if we have to. However, we also have the advantage of knowing how to harness energy in ways our ancestors couldn't imagine. We just need to adapt our knowledge to our current resources. Let's start with the basics. Fire. It's one of humanity's oldest technologies, and it's more important now than ever. If you haven't already, learn how to start a fire without matches or lighters. The hand drill method, using a spindle and fireboard, is effective but takes practice. The bow drill method is easier for many people. If you have them, magnifying glasses or convex lenses from cameras or binoculars can be used to focus sunlight and start a fire. Fire provides heat, light, and the ability to purify water and cook food. But it can do even more. Simple steam engines can be created using fire to heat water. These can be used to power small generators or to run machinery directly. It's not high-tech, but it's a start. Moving up the technological ladder, let's talk about solar power. The same solar energy that caused this disaster can also be part of our salvation. We've received reports from several communities that have managed to salvage or create solar panels. Even small panels can be incredibly useful for charging batteries or powering low-energy devices. If you have the technical know-how, it's possible to create rudimentary solar cells using copper sheeting and salt water. The efficiency is low, but it's a starting point. More promisingly, there are reports of people successfully recovering solar panels from damaged equipment. Solar calculators, garden lights, and of course rooftop panels are all potential sources. Even if a panel is cracked, it may still produce some power. Remember that they need regular maintenance. Keep them clean and free from debris. If possible, set them up so they can be angled to follow the sun's path through the day. This can significantly increase their efficiency. Wind power is another viable option, especially in open areas. We've heard from a community about 50 miles west that has successfully set up a small wind turbine. They're using it primarily to power a community refrigerator, which is helping them preserve food and medicine. If you have the materials and skills, even a small wind turbine can make a big difference. Hydropower is worth considering if you're near a flowing water source. A simple water wheel connected to a generator can provide a steady, if small, supply of electricity. Even if you can't generate electricity, the mechanical power from a water wheel can be used directly for tasks like grinding grain or pumping water. Now, let's talk about what to do with the power you generate. Battery storage is crucial. Car batteries are a good option if you can find them. They're designed to hold a charge for long periods and can handle deep cycling. Just be careful when handling them, the acid inside is dangerous. For smaller scale storage, look for rechargeable batteries from laptops, power tools, or even toys. These can be repurposed to power small devices. If you have technical skills, you might even be able to wire several of these together to create larger battery banks. Remember, electricity isn't just about powering lights or radios. It can be used for electrolysis to produce hydrogen, which can be used as a fuel. It can power pumps for water systems or ventilation in shelters. In medical settings, even a small amount of reliable power can be life-saving. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What about restarting larger power plants? The truth is, it's not going to be easy or quick. Most of our power infrastructure was not designed to withstand the kind of electromagnetic pulse we experienced. Transformers, control systems, and transmission lines have all been damaged. However, there is hope. We've received reports of engineers and technicians working to rebuild smaller, local power systems. They're focusing on simpler, more robust designs that can withstand future solar events. It's slow work, but it's happening. If you have relevant skills, electrical engineering, power systems, even general mechanical knowledge, your expertise could be invaluable in these efforts. While we work towards rebuilding our power systems, we also need to adapt to living with less energy. This isn't just about survival, it's about creating a more resilient society. We've become so dependent on constant, unlimited power that we've forgotten how to live without it. Now's the time to relearn those skills. Consider how you can redesign your living spaces to make better use of natural light and ventilation. Look into passive solar heating and cooling techniques. These don't require any power but can make a big difference in comfort and sustainability. When it comes to preserving food without refrigeration, we can learn a lot from our ancestors. Root cellars, for instance, use the natural coolness of the earth to keep food fresh. Drying, smoking, and fermenting are all effective preservation methods that don't require electricity. Now, let's talk about communication technology. I know many of you are wondering how we're broadcasting right now. We're using a combination of salvaged equipment and improvised solutions. Our transmitter is powered by a combination of solar panels and a bicycle generator. Yes, we literally have someone pedaling to keep us on the air. For those of you looking to set up your own communication systems, start small. Short-range radios like walkie-talkies can be incredibly useful for local communication. If you can get your hands on ham radio equipment, even better. These systems are often more robust than commercial communication systems and can operate on very low power. For longer-range communication, we're seeing a revival of older technologies. Morse code, believe it or not, is making a comeback. It's simple, can be transmitted over long distances with minimal power, and the equipment to send and receive it can be improvised relatively easily. Some communities are even experimenting with heliograph simple devices that use mirrors to flash sunlight over long distances. It's slow, but it works, and requires no power at all. We've also heard reports of people using computer equipment that survive the pulse to set up small local networks. These aren't connected to the internet as we knew it, but they allow for information sharing within communities. If you have intact computer equipment, guard it carefully. The knowledge stored on those hard drives could be invaluable. Speaking of valuable technology, let's talk about what to do with any devices that survive the pulse. First, if you have any working electronics that weren't plugged in during the event, keep them safe. They're rare and valuable resources now. If you have devices that aren't working, don't be too quick to discard them. Many components can be salvaged and repurposed. LED lights from phones or tablets can be rewired to create low-power lighting systems. Speakers can be turned into microphones. Even if you don't have the skills to do this yourself, hold on to these items. Someone in your community might be able to make use of them. For those of you with technical skills, now's the time to get creative. We've heard stories of people creating improvised wind-up chargers, building simple radios from scratch, even rigging car alternators to work as small generators. Every little bit of technology we can recover or recreate brings us one step closer to rebuilding. But remember, as important as technology is, it's not everything. We survived as a species for thousands of years without electricity, and we can do it again if we have to. Don't let the lack of modern technology paralyze you. Use your ingenuity, adapt, and overcome. In fact, this situation presents us with a unique opportunity. As we rebuild, we can choose which technologies to bring back and which to leave behind. We can create a more sustainable, resilient technological infrastructure, one that serves our needs without making us overly dependent on it. Think about the technologies that are truly important. Communication, certainly. Medical equipment, absolutely. But do we need every labor-saving device we once had? Maybe this is a chance to find a better balance between technological convenience and self-reliance. As we wrap up this segment on energy and technology, I want to leave you with a thought. The most powerful technology we have isn't something that runs on electricity. It's the human mind. Our ability to solve problems, to adapt, to innovate. This is what will see us through this crisis and into a new future. So keep thinking, keep experimenting, keep sharing your knowledge. If you have skills or ideas related to energy or technology, find ways to teach others. If you don't have these skills, seek out those who do. Learn from them. The more we can spread this knowledge, the more resilient our communities will become. Remember, every bit of progress counts. Whether you've managed to rig up a small solar charger or you've just figured out how to start a fire without matches, you're contributing to our collective survival and eventual recovery. Stay tuned, listeners. Coming up, we'll be discussing agriculture and sustainable food production in our changed world. If you've had success with crops or livestock, or if you've discovered efficient ways to preserve food without refrigeration, we want to hear from you. Your knowledge could help feed countless others. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the darkest times, human ingenuity shines bright. Keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a lot of ground already, from water purification and shelter to health concerns and energy solutions. Now, let's turn our attention to a topic that's crucial for our long-term survival: agriculture and sustainable food production. In our pre-blackout world, most of us were disconnected from the source of our food. We relied on complex supply chains and industrial agriculture. But now we're having to relearn the basics of growing our own food. It's challenging, but it's also an opportunity to create a more sustainable and resilient food system. Let's start with the basics of crop selection. In these uncertain times, focus on crops that are calorie dense and relatively easy to grow. Potatoes are an excellent choice. They're nutritious, yield a lot of food for the space they take up, and can be stored for long periods. Other root vegetables like carrots and turnips are also good options. Beans and peas are crucial for any survival garden. They're high in protein and can help replenish soil nitrogen, which is essential for healthy plant growth. Plus, dried beans can be stored for years if kept dry. Squash, including pumpkins and zucchini, are also worth considering. They're relatively easy to grow and many varieties store well. The seeds are also edible and nutritious. For greens, focus on hardy varieties that can withstand varying conditions. Kale, collard greens, and Swiss chard are all good choices. They're packed with nutrients and can often be harvested multiple times from the same plant. Now, let's talk about maximizing your yield in small spaces. Many of you might be working with limited land, especially in urban areas. Don't let that discourage you. Vertical gardening techniques can dramatically increase the amount of food you can grow in a small area. Trellises can be used to grow squash varieties. You can make these from salvaged materials like old fencing or branches. Even strings tied between supports can work. Container gardening is another great option for small spaces. Almost anything that can hold soil can be used as a planter: old buckets, wooden crates, even worn-out boots. Just make sure to drill drainage holes if they don't already have them. If you're in an urban area, don't overlook unconventional spaces. Rooftops, balconies, even windowsills can be used to grow food. Every little bit counts. For those of you with more space, consider implementing a method called companion planting. This involves growing different crops close together in ways that benefit each other. For example, planting basil near tomatoes can improve the tomatoes' flavor and help repel pests. Marigolds planted throughout a garden can deter many insects. Speaking of pests, let's address one of the biggest challenges in our new agricultural reality: managing pests and diseases without modern pesticides. It's not easy, but it's far from impossible. First, focus on prevention. Healthy plants in healthy soil are naturally more resistant to pests and diseases. Compost everything you can to create rich, fertile soil. Rotate your crops each season to prevent the buildup of pest populations and soil-borne diseases. When pests do appear, start with the least harmful interventions. Often, simply picking off pests by hand can be effective, especially in small gardens. For flying insects, try setting up sticky traps made from boards painted yellow and coated with a sticky substance like honey or tree sap. Many common plants can be used to create natural pesticides. Garlic and hot pepper sprays can deter a wide range of insects. A spray made from neem oil, if you can find it, is effective against many pests and is relatively safe for beneficial insects. Remember, not all insects are bad for your garden. Ladybugs, praying mantises, and many types of wasps eat harmful pests. Encourage these beneficial insects by providing habitat for them. Small piles of sticks or stones can serve as insect hotels. Now let's talk about water. Efficient water use is crucial, especially in drier areas. Mulching around your plants with straw, leaves, or even shredded paper can help retain soil moisture and suppress weeds. If you can set up a rainwater collection system, even in urban areas, you'd be surprised how much water you can collect from rooftops. For irrigation, consider setting up a simple drip system. This can be as basic as plastic bottles with small holes punched in them, buried next to your plants. They'll slowly release water directly to the roots, reducing water loss through evaporation. Let's move on to another crucial aspect of food security: preserving your harvest. Without reliable refrigeration, we need to turn to older methods of food preservation. Drying is one of the simplest preservation methods. Many fruits and vegetables can be dried in the sun or over a fire. Herbs can be hung to dry in bunches. Dried foods take up less space and can last for months or even years if stored properly. Fermentation is another valuable preservation technique. It not only preserves food, but can make it more nutritious and easier to digest. Sauerkraut, kimchi, and yogurt are all examples of fermented foods. The bacteria involved in fermentation can also help boost your immune system. Canning is a bit more complex, but can be a great way to preserve a wide variety of foods. If you have canning equipment, guard it carefully. If not, it's possible to improvise with regular jars and a large pot for boiling. Just be sure to follow safe canning practices to avoid the risk of botulism. For those of you in colder climates, don't forget about the possibility of using snow and ice for refrigeration. A well-insulated snow pit can keep food frozen for extended periods. Now, let's talk about protein sources. While it's possible to get all the protein you need from plant sources, many of you may be considering raising animals for food. This comes with its own set of challenges, but it can be a valuable addition to your food production efforts. Chickens are a popular choice for small-scale animal husbandry. They provide both eggs and meat and can help with pest control in your garden. They're relatively easy to care for and can often find much of their own food if allowed to free range. Rabbits are another good option for small-scale meat production. They reproduce quickly, don't require much space, and can be fed on many types of plant material. For those with more land and resources, goats can be a versatile addition to a homestead. They provide milk, which can be made into cheese and butter, and eventually meat. They're also excellent at clearing brush and can eat a wide variety of plants. If you're near a water source, don't overlook fish as a potential food source. Even a small pond can be used for aquaculture. Tilapia are a popular choice as they grow quickly and can tolerate a range of conditions. Remember, if you're new to raising animals, start small and learn as you go. It's better to succeed with a few animals than to get overwhelmed trying to manage too many. Let's also discuss foraging as a supplement to your food production efforts. Many wild plants are edible and nutritious, but it's crucial to be absolutely certain of your identification before eating any wild plant. Mistakes can be deadly. Some common edible wild plants include dandelions. The entire plant is edible, chickweed, lamb's quarters, and purslane. Wild berries like blackberries and raspberries are also good finds. Acorns can be a valuable food source, though they require processing to remove tannins. If you're near wooded areas, learning to identify edible mushrooms can provide an additional food source. However, this is an area where expert knowledge is crucial. Many edible mushrooms have toxic lookalikes. For those of you in urban areas, don't overlook the potential for urban foraging. Many common landscaping plants are actually edible. Roses, for example, produce edible hips high in vitamin C. Crab apples, often planted as decorative trees, are safe to eat though they may be tart. As we look to the future, we need to think about more than just producing food for the next harvest. We need to consider how to create sustainable, regenerative agricultural systems. One approach that's gaining traction among survivors is permaculture. This is a design system that mimics natural ecosystems to create sustainable and productive landscapes. It involves careful observation of your local environment and working with nature rather than against it. Key principles of permaculture include maximizing the use of edges, where two ecosystems meet, which are often highly productive. Stacking functions, each element in your system should serve multiple purposes. And creating closed-loop systems where waste from one part of the system becomes input for another. For example, you might create a pond that provides water for irrigation, serves as a home for edible fish, attracts beneficial insects and birds, and moderates temperature extremes in your garden. The nutrient-rich pond water can be used to fertilize crops, and plant waste can be fed to the fish. Another important aspect of sustainable agriculture is seed saving. In our new world, we can't rely on being able to buy new seeds each year. Learn how to properly save seeds from your best producing plants. This not only ensures you'll have seeds for next year's crop, but over time, it allows you to develop plant varieties that are well adapted to your specific local conditions. As we wrap up this segment on agriculture and food production, I want to emphasize the importance of community in these efforts. Farming is hard work, and it's even harder when you're trying to do everything alone. Work together with your neighbors. Share labor, share knowledge, share seeds and harvests. Consider setting up community gardens if you haven't already. These not only provide food, but also serve as centers for learning and social connection. In these challenging times, the simple act of growing food together can be powerfully healing. Remember, we're not just growing food, we're growing a new way of life, one that's more connected to the earth and to each other. It's challenging, yes, but it's also an opportunity to create something better than what we had before. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing mental health and coping strategies in our post-blackout world. If you've found effective ways to manage stress and maintain hope in these challenging times, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help others find their way through the darkness. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the harshest conditions, life finds a way to grow and thrive. Keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a lot of ground already, from water and food to energy and agriculture. Now, let's turn our attention to a topic that's just as crucial for our survival, but often overlooked: mental health and coping strategies. The world as we knew it has changed dramatically, and it's natural to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or depressed. We've all lost something in this crisis, whether it's loved ones, our homes, our jobs, or simply the comfort of our old routines. It's important to acknowledge these feelings and understand that they're a normal response to an abnormal situation. Let's start by talking about stress. In our new reality, stress is a constant companion. The daily struggle for survival, the uncertainty about the future, the loss of our old support systems, all of these contribute to chronic stress. And while some stress can be motivating, one of the most effective ways to manage stress is through routine. It might seem trivial given everything we're dealing with, but establishing and maintaining a daily routine can provide a sense of normalcy and control. Try to wake up and go to sleep at consistent times. Set aside specific times for tasks like gathering water, tending to your garden, or doing necessary repairs. Include time for rest and social interaction in your routine as well. Physical activity is another powerful stress buster. I know many of you are already getting plenty of physical activity just trying to survive, but try to include some form of intentional exercise in your routine. It doesn't have to be intense. A daily walk, some stretching, or simple bodyweight exercises can make a big difference. Exercise releases endorphins, which are natural mood boosters, and can help improve sleep quality. Speaking of sleep, getting enough rest is crucial for both physical and mental health. I know it's not easy to sleep when you're worried about survival, but do your best to create a sleep-friendly environment. If possible, designate a specific area for sleeping and use it only for that purpose. This helps train your brain to associate that space with rest. If you're having trouble falling asleep, try deep breathing exercises or progressive muscle relaxation. Now, let's talk about the importance of social connections. Humans are social creatures, and maintaining relationships is crucial for our mental health. In our post-blackout world, it's easy to become isolated, especially if you're not part of a larger community. Make an effort to connect with others, even if it's just a brief conversation while trading supplies. If you're part of a community, consider organizing regular gatherings. These don't have to be elaborate. A simple community meal or a group work session can provide valuable opportunities for social interaction. For those of you who are alone or separated from loved ones, finding ways to combat loneliness is crucial. If possible, try to join a community. If that's not an option, look for ways to contribute to the survival efforts of others. Helping others not only provides social connection, but can also give you a sense of purpose, which is vital for mental health. Let's address a difficult topic: grief. Many of us have lost loved ones, either directly due to the blackout or in the chaotic aftermath. Others are grieving the loss of our old way of life. It's important to allow yourself to feel this grief. Suppressing these emotions can lead to longer-term mental health issues. If you're grieving, try to find healthy ways to express your emotions. This could be through talking with others, writing in a journal, or creating some form of art. Remember, there's no right way to grieve, and everyone processes loss differently. Be patient with yourself and with others who are grieving. For those dealing with more severe mental health issues like depression or anxiety disorders, the loss of access to medication and professional help is particularly challenging. If you're in this situation, know that you're not alone. While it's not a replacement for professional treatment, peer support can be incredibly valuable. If you're comfortable doing so, consider sharing your struggles with trusted friends or community members. You might be surprised at how many others are dealing with similar issues. There are also non-medication strategies that can help manage symptoms of depression and anxiety. Regular exercise, as mentioned earlier, can be beneficial. Mindfulness and meditation practices can help reduce anxiety and improve mood. Even simple deep breathing exercises can help calm an anxious mind. For those dealing with trauma, either from the blackout itself or from experiences in its aftermath, it's important to understand that healing takes time. Symptoms like flashbacks, nightmares, or feeling constantly on edge are common responses to trauma. If you're experiencing these, try to create a sense of safety in your environment. This might mean fortifying your shelter, creating a buddy system with trusted community members, or establishing clear plans for various emergency scenarios. Grounding techniques can be helpful when dealing with flashbacks or intense anxiety. One simple technique is the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This helps bring your focus back to the present moment. Now, let's talk about hope. In times like these, maintaining hope for the future can be challenging, but it's absolutely crucial. Hope gives us the strength to keep going when things get tough. It's not about naive optimism, but about believing that our actions can make a positive difference. One way to cultivate hope is to focus on small, achievable goals. Maybe it's successfully growing a new type of vegetable in your garden, or learning a new skill that's useful in our post-blackout world. Celebrate these small victories. They're proof that progress is possible, even in difficult circumstances. Another way to maintain hope is to look for signs of recovery and rebuilding. Share stories of communities coming together, of successful harvests, of new babies being born. These are all signs that life goes on, that we're not just surviving, but starting to rebuild. It's also important to maintain some connection to the things that brought you joy in the pre-blackout world. If you were an artist, keep creating, even if your materials are limited. If you loved reading, organize a book exchange in your community. If music was your passion, sing or play an instrument if you have one. These activities remind us of our humanity and give us something to look forward to beyond mere survival. Let's talk about the importance of laughter and play. It might seem frivolous given our circumstances, but humor and playfulness are powerful coping mechanisms. They release tension, boost mood, and can even strengthen social bonds. Don't feel guilty about finding moments of joy or laughter. It doesn't mean you're not taking your situation seriously. In fact, it's a sign of resilience. For those of you with children, helping them cope with our new reality presents unique challenges. Children are remarkably resilient, but they also need support to process the changes they're experiencing. Try to maintain as much consistency as possible in their daily lives. Involve them in age-appropriate tasks related to survival and rebuilding. It gives them a sense of purpose and control. Make time for play and learning, and most importantly, create space for them to express their feelings and ask questions. Now, let's address a sensitive topic: suicidal thoughts. If you're having thoughts of suicide, please know that you're not alone, and that these feelings can pass. Reach out to someone you trust. If you don't have anyone nearby, try to make your way to the nearest community. Your life has value, and the skills and knowledge you possess could be crucial for our collective survival and rebuilding efforts. For those of you in leadership positions in your communities, it's important to recognize the mental health needs of those you're leading. Create spaces for people to share their struggles without judgment. Encourage community building activities. And remember to take care of your own mental health as well. Leaders often carry a heavy emotional burden. As we look to the future, it's important to recognize that our mental health needs will continue to evolve. The initial shock and trauma of the blackout may be behind us, but we're now dealing with the long-term stress of rebuilding society. We need to be prepared for new challenges like the potential for conflict over resources or the emotional impact of slow progress in rebuilding. But we should also be prepared for positive changes. As we adapt to our new reality, many people are reporting a renewed sense of purpose. stronger community bonds, and a deeper appreciation for the simple things in life. These positive experiences don't negate the very real hardships we're facing, but they do show that growth and positive change are possible even in the most challenging circumstances. Remember, taking care of your mental health isn't selfish, it's a crucial part of survival. Just as you wouldn't ignore a physical injury, don't ignore your emotional and psychological needs. Encourage others in your community to prioritize mental health as well. The stronger we are mentally and emotionally, the better equipped we'll be to face the challenges of rebuilding our world. As we wrap up this segment on mental health and coping strategies, I want to leave you with a thought. In the face of this global catastrophe, the fact that we're still here, still fighting, still working to rebuild, that's a testament to the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Every day that we keep going is an act of hope and defiance against the darkness. You are not alone in this struggle. Even if you can't see or hear them, there are others out there, facing the same challenges, harboring the same fears, and nurturing the same hopes. We're all in this together, and together, we will find our way through this dark time and into a new dawn. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing education and skill sharing in our post-blackout world. If you've found effective ways to preserve knowledge or teach crucial skills, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help ensure that the knowledge we need to rebuild our world isn't lost. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the darkest night, the human spirit shines bright. Keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout topics so far. We've covered from basic survival needs to mental health. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of our long-term survival and recovery: education and skill sharing. In our pre-blackout world, we often took education for granted. We had schools, universities, libraries, and the internet at our fingertips. Now, we're faced with the challenge of preserving and passing on knowledge without these institutions and technologies. But make no mistake, education is more important now than ever. Let's start by talking about the importance of preserving knowledge from the before times. We've lost access to a lot of information that was stored digitally, but we still have books, and more importantly, we have people with knowledge and skills. If you have expertise in any area, whether it's medicine, engineering, agriculture, or any other field, it's crucial that you find ways to pass on that knowledge. One effective method for preserving knowledge is through oral tradition. This might seem primitive compared to our old ways of storing information, but it's a method that served humanity well for thousands of years before the advent of writing. Consider organizing regular knowledge-sharing sessions in your community, where people with different areas of expertise can teach others. For those of you who have managed to salvage books, guard them carefully. They're invaluable resources now. Consider setting up a community library where books can be shared and protected. If you have books on practical skills like first aid, agriculture, or engineering, these are particularly valuable. Now, let's talk about education for children. The formal education system as we knew it may be gone, but that doesn't mean learning should stop. In fact, education is more important than ever for the younger generation. They're the ones who will be rebuilding our world in the years to come. One approach that's working well in many communities is a return to the old one-room schoolhouse model. Gather children of various ages together and have adults with different areas of expertise take turns teaching. Focus on practical skills as well as traditional academic subjects. Reading, writing, and basic math are still crucial, but also include lessons on agriculture, first aid, and basic survival skills. For older children and teenagers, consider implementing an apprenticeship system. Pair them with adults who have valuable skills, whether it's carpentry, metalworking, medicine, or any other useful trade. This not only ensures that these skills are passed on, but also gives young people a sense of purpose and contribution to the community. Don't forget about the importance of play and creativity in education. It might seem frivolous given our circumstances, but play is how children naturally learn and process the world around them. Encourage imaginative play, storytelling, and artistic expression. These activities help develop problem-solving skills and emotional resilience, both of which are crucial in our new world. For adults, continuous learning is just as important. None of us were fully prepared for the world we're living in now, and we all have new skills to learn. Organize skill sharing workshops in your community. These could cover anything from basic survival skills like fire starting and water purification to more specialized knowledge like herbal medicine or blacksmithing. One area where education is particularly crucial is in agriculture. Many of us are having to learn farming skills from scratch. If you have knowledge in this area, share it widely. Consider setting up demonstration gardens where you can teach others about soil preparation, planting techniques, pest management, and harvesting. Another critical area is medical knowledge. If you have any medical training, even basic first aid, it's essential that you pass this on to others. Organize regular first aid classes in your community. Teach people how to recognize and treat common illnesses, how to handle injuries, and when to seek more advanced help if it's available. Let's talk about the importance of preserving historical knowledge. It might seem less immediately useful than practical skills, but understanding our history is crucial for rebuilding society. We need to remember where we came from to have a sense of where we're going. Encourage elders in your community to share stories of the past. This not only preserves historical knowledge, but also helps maintain a sense of cultural continuity in these chaotic times. Now, let's address the challenge of teaching without modern technology. We've become accustomed to having visual aids, videos, and interactive software to assist in education. Without these tools, we need to get creative. One effective method is hands-on learning. Instead of just telling someone how to do something, show them, and then have them practice under your guidance. This works for everything from teaching basic hygiene to complex skills like setting a broken bone. Another useful technique is the Socratic method, asking questions to stimulate critical thinking and illuminate ideas. This can be particularly effective for teaching abstract concepts or problem-solving skills. Encourage students to question, to think critically, and to come up with their own solutions to problems. For teaching literacy, consider creating simple books or using found materials as reading resources. Signs, old magazines, even product labels can be used to teach reading. Encourage writing by having people keep journals or write letters to be shared within the community. Math can be taught using physical objects for counting and basic operations. As skills advance, practical applications like calculating crop yields or designing structures can reinforce mathematical concepts. For science education, focus on observation and experimentation. The natural world around us provides endless opportunities for scientific learning. Teach children to observe plant growth, weather patterns, and animal behavior. Simple experiments can demonstrate basic scientific principles. Language learning is another area we shouldn't neglect. In our interconnected pre-blackout world, many people spoke multiple languages. Preserving this knowledge could be crucial as we work to rebuild and reconnect with other surviving communities. If you're multilingual, consider offering language classes. Now, let's talk about the importance of teaching survival skills. These are no longer just nice-to-have knowledge, they're essential for everyone. Basic skills like fire starting, water purification, foraging for edible plants, and basic self-defense should be taught to everyone in the community, including children, in age-appropriate ways, of course. More advanced survival skills like hunting, trapping, and advanced first aid can be taught to those who show aptitude and interest. Remember, in our new world, specialization is a luxury. The more skills each person has, the more resilient our communities become. Let's not forget about teaching practical trades. Skills like carpentry, metalworking, leatherworking, and textile production are incredibly valuable now. If you have these skills, start apprenticeship programs to pass them on. Even if you're not an expert, pooling knowledge and learning together can be effective. One challenge we face in education now is the lack of standardization. In the old world, we had curricula and educational standards that were applied across large areas. Now, education is by necessity more localized and varied. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It allows education to be tailored to the specific needs of each community. However, as we work towards rebuilding larger-scale society, we may need to think about how to ensure some level of consistency in education across different communities. Another important aspect of education in our new world is teaching adaptability and problem-solving. The world has changed dramatically, and it's likely to keep changing as we work to rebuild. We need to teach people, especially the younger generation, how to think creatively, how to adapt to new situations, and how to solve problems with limited resources. Critical thinking skills are more important than ever. In a world where information is scarce and often unreliable, the ability to analyze, question, and think independently is crucial. Encourage debate and discussion on various topics. Teach people how to evaluate sources of information and how to reason through complex problems. Let's talk about the role of storytelling in education. Stories are powerful tools for passing on knowledge, values, and cultural heritage. Encourage storytelling in your community. This can include stories from the before times, stories of survival and adaptation in our new world, and traditional stories that have been passed down through generations. These stories do more than entertain, they help us make sense of our experiences and maintain a sense of identity and continuity. As we think about rebuilding society, we also need to consider what kind of education system we want to create for the future. This is an opportunity to reimagine education, to create a system that perhaps avoids some of the pitfalls of our old educational institutions. What values do we want to instill? What skills will be most important in the world we're rebuilding? These are questions worth discussing in your communities as you develop your educational practices. Remember, education isn't just about acquiring knowledge, it's about fostering curiosity, creativity, and a love of learning. Even in these challenging times, try to maintain a sense of wonder about the world. Encourage questions, exploration, and discovery. This spirit of inquiry is what will drive us to rebuild and perhaps create a better world than the one we lost. As we wrap up this segment on education and skill sharing, I want to emphasize survival and recovery. Every bit of knowledge we preserve, every skill we pass on, is a step towards rebuilding our world. Whether you're teaching a child to read, showing a neighbor how to preserve food, or passing on specialized technical knowledge, you're contributing to our collective future. Education is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's how we'll ensure that the knowledge and skills we need to survive and rebuild aren't lost. It's how we'll adapt to our new reality and eventually thrive in it. And it's how we'll maintain our humanity and our hope for the future in these challenging times. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing transportation and communication in our post-blackout world. If you found innovative ways to travel or communicate over long distances, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help reconnect our scattered communities and bring us one step closer to rebuilding our world. This is Atlas, reminding you that knowledge is power, especially in our new world. Keep learning, keep teaching, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to education and skill sharing. Now, let's turn our attention to two crucial aspects of our pre-blackout world that have been dramatically affected: transportation and communication. In the world we knew before, we took for granted the ability to travel vast distances quickly and to communicate instantly with people on the other side of the planet. Now, we're faced with the challenge of moving people and goods and sharing information in a world where most of our modern transportation and communication infrastructure has been rendered useless. Let's start with transportation. The loss of functioning vehicles and the fuel to run them has forced us to rethink how we move around. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, many of us found ourselves suddenly limited to how far we could walk or bike. But as we've adapted to our new reality, we've found ways to expand our range. For short-distance travel, bicycles have become invaluable. If you have a functioning bicycle, maintain it carefully. Learn basic repair skills if you haven't already. Bike tires, chains, and other parts are now precious commodities. If you don't have a bike, consider trying to build one from salvaged parts. Even a rudimentary bicycle can greatly increase your mobility. For those of you in urban or suburban areas, don't overlook skateboards, roller skates, or scooters. While they might seem like toys, they can be efficient ways to cover ground, especially if you need to navigate around obstacles like abandoned vehicles. In rural areas, horses and other draft animals have made a significant comeback. If you're fortunate enough to have access to horses, donkeys, or oxen, these animals can be incredibly valuable for both transportation and agricultural work. Remember, though, that working with draft animals requires specific skills and knowledge. If you're new to this, try to find someone with experience who can teach you. For water transportation, simple rowing boats and canoes are seeing a lot of use in areas near rivers or lakes. If you have the skills and resources, consider building boats for your community. Even simple rafts can be useful for moving goods along waterways. Now, let's talk about maintaining and repairing the vehicles we do have. Many cars and trucks survived the initial electromagnetic pulse, especially older models with simpler electronics. The challenge now is keeping them running without a steady supply of fuel and replacement parts. If you have mechanical skills, you're invaluable in our new world. Focus on keeping older, simpler vehicles running. These are easier to repair and less likely to have been disabled by the pulse. Learn to perform basic maintenance without specialized tools. Share your knowledge with others. Your skills could literally keep your community moving. For those of you with functional vehicles, use them wisely. Organize carpools for necessary trips. Use vehicles primarily for transporting goods or for emergencies. Every trip should have a purpose. Fuel is far too precious to waste. Some communities have had success converting vehicles to run on alternative fuels. Wood gasifiers, for instance, can allow vehicles to run on burned wood instead of gasoline. It's not as efficient, but it's a way to keep vehicles operational when traditional fuel is scarce. In terms of fuel, ethanol production is something many communities are exploring. If you have the knowledge and resources, setting up small-scale ethanol production could provide a valuable fuel source. Just be mindful of the balance between using crops for food versus fuel. For long-distance travel, we're seeing a return to older methods. Pack animals, horse-drawn wagons, and even human-powered handcarts are being used for longer journeys. These methods are slower, but they're reliable and don't depend on complex technology or scarce fuels. Some communities are working on re-establishing rail travel, at least on a small scale. Trains, especially older steam engines, could be a game changer for long-distance transportation and trade. If you have any knowledge of railway operations, your skills could be crucial in these efforts. Now, let's shift our focus to communication. The loss of our global telecommunications infrastructure was one of the most immediately noticeable effects of the blackout. Suddenly, we couldn't call our loved ones, check the news online, or send a quick text. We've had to adapt quickly to find new or old ways of sharing information. For short-range communication, many communities have set up runner systems. Designated individuals carry messages between different parts of the community or to nearby settlements. It's slow compared to what we were used to, but it's reliable and doesn't require any technology. Some areas have had success with signal systems using flags, lights, or even smoke signals. These can be effective for sending simple, prearranged messages over moderate distances. If you're setting up a system like this, make sure everyone in the community knows the codes. For slightly longer distances, some communities are using mirror signaling or heliographs. These devices use mirrors to flash sunlight over long distances, allowing for Morse code communication. It's an old technology, but effective when you have a clear line of sight. Speaking of Morse code, it's making a significant comeback. If you know Morse code, you're a valuable asset. Consider teaching others in your community. Even if you don't have functioning radio equipment, Morse code can be transmitted through sound, light, or even touch, making it a versatile communication method. Now, let's talk about radio communication. While many modern radios were fried by the pulse, some survived, particularly older models and those that were unplugged or shielded at the time. If you have functioning radio equipment, it's incredibly valuable. Shortwave and ham radios are particularly useful for long-distance communication. If you're able to set up a radio station, even a small one, you can provide a vital service to your community. Share news, coordinate resources, and help people connect with distant loved ones. Just remember to use power wisely. These broadcasts consume precious energy. For those of you with technical skills, consider trying to repair damaged radio equipment. Even if you can't fully restore it, you might be able to salvage parts to build simpler communication devices. Some communities have had success setting up primitive telephone systems using salvaged wire and simple audio transducers. These are limited in range, but can be very useful for communication within a local area. In urban areas, some groups have repurposed old pneumatic tube systems for sending physical messages. If you're in a city that had these systems, they could be a valuable communication resource. Don't overlook the importance of written communication. Establish message boards in your community where people can post news, requests, or messages for others. If you can, set up a postal system between nearby communities. Regular mail service, even if it's slow, can be a huge morale booster. For preserving and sharing larger amounts of information, we're seeing a return to older methods. Some communities are hand copying important books to share knowledge. Others are using printmaking techniques to produce simple newsletters or informational pamphlets. If you have any skills in these areas, they're more valuable now than ever. As we think about rebuilding larger scale communication networks, we need to consider what's realistic and sustainable in our new world. Small, local networks might be more achievable and more resilient than trying to recreate the global internet we once had. Some tech-savvy survivors are experimenting with low-tech versions of computer networks. Using simple, battery-powered devices and short-range radio transmission, it's possible to create local area networks for sharing information. If you have the skills to set something like this up, it could be a huge asset to your community. Remember, in our new world, information is one of our most valuable resources. Accurate information about weather patterns, the location of resources, potential threats, and successful survival strategies can mean the difference between life and death. As we work to rebuild our communication networks, we need to prioritize the sharing of this kind of vital information. At the same time, don't underestimate the importance of communication for maintaining morale and social connections. Finding ways for people to share messages and experiences with other communities can help maintain hope and a sense of broader human connection in these isolated times. As we look to the future, we need to think carefully about what kind of communication infrastructure we want to rebuild. Do we try to recreate the global, instantaneous communication we had before? Or do we focus on more local, sustainable systems? These are questions worth discussing in your communities as you work on your communication strategies. Remember, every message passed, every bit of information shared, is a step towards rebuilding our world. Whether you're running messages between neighborhoods, operating a radio station, or working to repair communication equipment, you're helping to reconnect our scattered communities. As we wrap up this segment on transportation and communication, I want to emphasize again how crucial these are for our long-term survival and recovery. Our ability to move people, goods, and information is fundamental to rebuilding society. Every vehicle repaired, every message transmitted, brings us one step closer to reconnecting our world. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing law and order in our post-blackout world. How do we maintain social cohesion and resolve conflicts in the absence of our old legal systems? If you've found effective ways to govern your communities and keep the peace, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help other communities navigate these challenging times. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in our disconnected world, we're all in this together. Keep moving forward, keep communicating, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to transportation and communication. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of rebuilding society: law and order in our new world. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, many areas experienced a breakdown of social order. Without functioning governments, police forces, or legal systems, some people took advantage of the chaos. But as we've begun to stabilize and form new communities, we've had to grapple with how to maintain social cohesion and resolve conflicts in the absence of our old systems. Let's start by talking about the importance of establishing clear community guidelines. In the absence of formal laws, having a set of agreed-upon rules can help prevent conflicts and provide a framework for resolving them when they do occur. Many communities have found success in creating these guidelines collaboratively, with input from all members. This not only ensures that the rules reflect the needs and values of the community, but also increases buy-in from community members. When creating these guidelines, focus on the basics first. Rules about resource sharing, work responsibilities, and basic behavior standards are a good place to start. Be clear about what actions are considered unacceptable and what the consequences will be. Remember, in our resource-scarce world, exile from the community can be a serious punishment, so use it judiciously. Now, let's talk about enforcement. Without a formal police force, many communities have turned to community watch systems. Volunteers take turns patrolling and responding to issues. If you're setting up a system like this, make sure to have clear guidelines about the use of force. The goal should be to maintain peace and safety, not to create a militant atmosphere. For more serious infractions, many communities have established councils to hear cases and make decisions. These often consist of respected community members chosen for their wisdom and fairness. If you're setting up a system like this, consider rotating membership to prevent any one person or group from having too much power. It's important to have a system for appeals as well. No system is perfect, and having a way to review and potentially overturn decisions can help maintain faith in the process. Now, let's address a difficult topic: dealing with crime in our new world. The nature of crime has changed in many ways. Theft of food or supplies is now often a matter of survival rather than greed. How do we balance compassion with the need to protect our resources? Many communities have found success with restorative justice approaches. Instead of purely punitive measures, these focus on having the offender make amends and reintegrate into the community. For example, someone caught stealing food might be required to work extra shifts in the community garden. This approach can help maintain social cohesion and address the root causes of behavior. For more serious crimes, especially violent ones, the solutions are more challenging. Some communities have established makeshift prisons, but these consume valuable resources. Others have turned to exile, but this can create dangers if multiple communities adopt this approach, leading to groups of desperate outcasts. There's no easy answer, but it's a problem every community needs to think carefully about. Let's talk about conflict resolution. In our close-knit communities, interpersonal conflicts can quickly become community problems if not addressed. Many groups have found success with mediation systems. Trained mediators help conflicting parties find mutually acceptable solutions. If you have experience in counseling, conflict resolution, or related fields, consider offering to serve as a mediator in your community. It's also important to have systems in place for resolving disputes between different communities. As we work to rebuild larger-scale society, we need ways to handle conflicts over resources, territory, or other issues without resorting to violence. Some areas have established regular meetings between community leaders to discuss issues and negotiate agreements. Now, let's address the question of what to do if you encounter someone claiming to represent the remnants of the old government or legal system. Be cautious in these situations. While there may be legitimate efforts to reestablish larger-scale governance, there's also the potential for people to abuse claimed authority. Verify credentials if possible, and consult with your community before agreeing to any demands or ceding authority. As we think about rebuilding larger-scale legal systems, we need to consider what we want to keep from our old world and what we want to change. This is an opportunity to create more just and equitable systems. What lessons can we learn from the successes and failures of our pre-blackout legal structures? One area where many communities are making changes is in their approach to mental health and addiction issues. Without access to many modern medications and treatments, we've had to find new ways to support those struggling with these challenges. Many groups are focusing on community support systems and integrating those with mental health or addiction issues into community life rather than isolating them. Let's talk about the importance of transparency in our new justice systems. In small communities, trust is paramount. Many groups have found success with open tribunal systems, where the entire community can observe proceedings. This can help maintain faith in the fairness of the process. It's also crucial to have systems in place for holding leaders accountable. Power corrupts, as the old saying goes, and this remains true in our new world. regular community meetings where leaders can be questioned, term limits for those in positions of authority, and clear processes for removing leaders who abuse their power can all help maintain a balance. Now, let's address a sensitive topic: the use of force. In our new world, the ability to defend ourselves and our communities is sometimes necessary, but it's crucial to have clear guidelines about when force can be used and to what degree. Many communities have established training programs to ensure that those responsible for security understand these guidelines and know how to de-escalate situations whenever possible. Let's talk about the importance of education in maintaining law and order. Teaching community members, especially young people, about the reasons behind our rules and the importance of social cooperation can help prevent conflicts before they start. Some communities have incorporated lessons on conflict resolution and community responsibility into their educational programs. It's also important to consider how we handle property rights in our new world. With so much abandoned property available, how do we decide who has the right to use what? Many communities have established systems for claiming and using abandoned resources, with an emphasis on what will provide the most benefit to the community as a whole. As we work to rebuild, we also need to think about how to handle intellectual property. In our pre-blackout world, patents and copyrights played a big role in innovation and creative works. But in our current situation, freely sharing knowledge and ideas can be crucial for survival. How do we balance the need to share information with the desire to encourage innovation? Let's address the issue of labor and work requirements. Many communities have established systems where all able members are expected to contribute to necessary tasks. But how do we handle situations where someone is unable or unwilling to work? What accommodations do we make for illness, disability, or age? These are complex questions that each community will need to grapple with. It's also important to consider how we handle family law in our new world. Issues like marriage, divorce, and child custody still arise, but without the legal frameworks we once had. Many communities are turning to elder councils to resolve these sensitive issues. As we rebuild, we also need to think about how to handle records and documentation. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, property deeds, these were all important in our old world. Some communities are establishing their own record-keeping systems to track these important life events and agreements. Let's talk about the concept of citizenship in our new world. What does it mean to be a member of a community? What rights and responsibilities come with that membership? Many groups are formalizing processes for accepting new members, including probationary periods and oaths of commitment to community values. It's also crucial to consider how we handle refugees or travelers. In our unstable world, people are often forced to leave their homes and seek safety elsewhere. How do we balance the desire to help others with the need to protect our limited resources? Many communities have established protocols for temporarily housing and feeding travelers while assessing whether they can be integrated into the community long-term. As we look to the future and the possibility of rebuilding larger-scale governance, we need to think carefully about representation. How do we ensure that all voices in our communities are heard? Some groups are experimenting with systems of direct democracy, where all adult members vote on major decisions. Others are using representative systems, but with more frequent elections and easier recall procedures than in our old world. Let's address the issue of human rights. In our struggle for survival, it can be easy to forget the principles of human dignity and individual rights that many of us once took for granted. But maintaining these principles is crucial if we want to rebuild a society worth living in. Many communities are incorporating basic human rights protections into their foundational guidelines. As we wrap up this segment on law and order in our new world, I want to emphasize again how crucial this is for our long-term survival and recovery. A society without rules, without ways to resolve conflicts and maintain social cohesion, cannot last. But the rules we create now, the systems we put in place, will shape the world we're rebuilding. This is our chance to learn from the mistakes of the past and create more equitable systems. Remember, the goal of law and order isn't just to punish wrongdoing, but to create a stable, safe environment where all members of the community can thrive. Every conflict peacefully resolved, every fair decision made, brings us one step closer to rebuilding a society we can be proud of. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing environmental changes and adaptation in our post-blackout world. How has the sudden halt of human industry affected our environment, and how do we adapt to these changes? If you've observed significant environmental shifts in your area or found innovative ways to adapt, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help other communities prepare for and navigate these changes. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the absence of old laws, our shared humanity and commitment to each other can guide us towards a just and peaceful society. Keep working together, keep striving for fairness, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to law and order. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of our new reality: environmental changes and adaptation. The sudden halt of human industry and technology has had profound effects on our environment, some of which we're only beginning to understand. Let's start by talking about what many of you have likely observed in your local ecosystems. One of the most immediate changes many have noticed is the improvement in air quality, especially in areas that were once heavily industrialized. Without the constant emissions from factories and vehicles, the air has become noticeably cleaner. This has led to some interesting effects. In many areas, visibility has improved dramatically. Stars that were once obscured by light pollution are now visible, and distant landmarks that were once hazy are now clear. We've received reports from several communities about changes in local wildlife behavior. With less human activity, many animals are becoming bolder, venturing into areas they once avoided. This can be both a blessing and a challenge. On one hand, it provides new opportunities for hunting and observing nature. On the other, it can lead to increased human-wildlife conflicts, especially with larger predators. In urban and suburban areas, we're seeing rapid changes as nature reclaims spaces once dominated by human activity. Plants are growing through cracks in pavement, vines are overtaking buildings, and trees are sprouting in unlikely places. This process, known as urban rewilding, is happening much faster than many expected. For those of you in coastal areas, you may have noticed changes in your local beaches and shorelines. Without constant human maintenance, many beaches are shifting and changing shape. In some areas, this is leading to increased erosion, while in others, new sandbars and small islands are forming. Now, let's talk about some of the more concerning environmental changes we're observing. In areas with nuclear power plants or other hazardous industrial sites, there are risks of contamination as these facilities go without maintenance. If you're in an area near one of these sites, it's crucial to be cautious and monitor for any signs of leakage or contamination. We're also seeing changes in weather patterns in many areas. While it's difficult to attribute any single weather event to the blackout, the sudden decrease in particulate matter in the atmosphere seems to be affecting local climates. Some areas are experiencing more rainfall than usual, while others are seeing drier conditions. In agricultural regions, the lack of industrial pesticides and fertilizers is leading to both challenges and opportunities. On one hand, many harmful pests are making a resurgence. On the other, beneficial insects like bees are thriving in many areas, which could lead to improved pollination and crop yields. Now, let's talk about how we can adapt to these environmental changes. First and foremost, observation is key. Pay close attention to the natural world around you. Notice changes in plant growth, animal behavior, and weather patterns. This knowledge can be crucial for survival and for making informed decisions about agriculture and resource use. For those of you engaged in agriculture, consider adopting permaculture principles. This approach to agriculture mimics natural ecosystems and can be more resilient to environmental changes. Techniques like companion planting, where different crops are grown together for mutual benefit, can help manage pests naturally and improve soil health. In areas experiencing increased rainfall, it's crucial to implement good water management practices. This can include creating swales to direct and absorb water, setting up rainwater collection systems, and choosing crops that thrive in wetter conditions. Conversely, in areas becoming drier, focus on water conservation techniques like mulching and selecting drought-resistant crops. For those in urban areas dealing with rewilding, try to work with these changes rather than against them. Allow certain areas to grow wild, which can provide habitats for beneficial insects and animals. At the same time, maintain clear areas around your living spaces to reduce the risk of fire and make it easier to spot approaching dangers. Let's talk about the opportunity this situation presents for restoring damaged ecosystems. Without the constant pressure of industrial activity, many ecosystems are showing signs of recovery. If you have the knowledge and resources, consider engaging in active restoration efforts. This could involve planting native species, removing invasive plants, or creating wildlife corridors. Now, let's address some of the potential long-term environmental concerns we need to be aware of. While the immediate effects of the blackout have included some positive environmental changes, we need to be prepared for potential negative consequences as well. One concern is the potential for increased wildfires in many regions. With less human management of forests and wildlands, fuel loads may increase. Combine this with changing weather patterns, and we could see more frequent and intense fires. If you're in a fire-prone area, it's crucial to create defensible spaces around your dwellings and have evacuation plans in place. Another long-term concern is the potential for new diseases to emerge or old ones to resurge as ecosystems shift. Keep an eye out for unusual illnesses in both humans and wildlife, and share this information with other communities if possible. We also need to be aware of the potential for changes in our water systems. Without maintenance of dams and other water management infrastructure, we may see changes in river flows, lake levels, and groundwater availability. If you rely on a local water source, monitor it closely and be prepared to adapt if it changes. Now, let's talk about how we can use our understanding of these environmental changes to our advantage. For example, the increase in wildlife could provide new hunting and foraging opportunities. However, it's crucial to hunt and forage sustainably to avoid depleting these resources. The rewilding of urban areas can also provide opportunities. Many plants that are often considered weeds are actually edible or have medicinal properties. Learning to identify and use these plants can provide valuable resources. Just be sure before consuming any wild plants. For those of you near coastal areas, the changes in shorelines and marine ecosystems could provide new fishing opportunities. However, be aware that without modern pollution controls, some areas may see increases in contamination levels in fish and shellfish. If possible, try to test for contaminants before relying heavily on these food sources. Let's discuss the importance of seed saving in our changing environment. As conditions shift, you may find that certain crop varieties perform better than others. By saving seeds from your best performing plants, you can gradually develop crops that are well adapted to your local conditions. This is a practice humans have used for thousands of years to adapt to changing environments. Now, let's talk about energy in the context of our changing environment. While we've lost most of our modern energy infrastructure, we have opportunities to develop new, more sustainable systems. The cleaner air and lack of artificial light pollution make solar power more efficient in many areas. If you have the skills and resources, consider setting up small-scale solar or wind power systems. For those in areas with flowing water, small-scale hydropower could be an option. Even a small stream can generate useful amounts of power with the right setup. Just be mindful of the impact on local ecosystems when implementing these systems. Let's address the issue of waste management in our new world. Without modern sanitation systems, managing waste has become a critical issue for many communities. It's essential to establish safe waste disposal practices to prevent disease and protect local water sources. Many communities are returning to traditional composting and recycling practices, turning waste into a resource for agriculture. Now, let's talk about the importance of passing on environmental knowledge to the next generation. The children growing up in this post-blackout world will need to understand these new environmental realities. Incorporate nature observation and sustainable practices into your community's education efforts. Teaching children to read the signs in nature, to understand weather patterns, and to live in harmony with the local ecosystem will be crucial for long-term survival. As we look to the future, we need to consider how to balance our survival needs with environmental stewardship. The blackout has given nature a chance to recover in many areas, and as we rebuild, we have an opportunity to create a more sustainable relationship with our environment. This will require careful thought and planning. One approach that many communities are finding successful is the concept of rewilding with purpose. This involves allowing some areas to return to a more natural state while actively managing others for food production and other human needs. By creating a patchwork of wild and cultivated areas, we can support biodiversity while also meeting our needs. Let's talk about the importance of maintaining biodiversity in our new world. A diverse ecosystem is more resilient to changes and disturbances. As you work to rebuild and cultivate your local environment, try to maintain a variety of plant and animal species. This diversity can provide a buffer against diseases, pests, and environmental changes. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: climate change. While the sudden halt of industrial activity has likely slowed the pace of global warming, the long-term effects of climate change are still with us. We need to be prepared for continuing shifts in weather patterns, sea levels, and ecosystem distributions. Stay flexible in your approach to agriculture and resource management, and be prepared to adapt as conditions change. As we wrap up this segment on environmental changes and adaptation, I want to emphasize again how crucial our relationship with the environment is for our long-term survival and recovery. The natural world is not just something to be exploited for resources, it's the foundation of our existence. By working with nature rather than against it, we can create more resilient and sustainable communities. Remember, every careful observation you make, every sustainable practice you implement, brings us one step closer to rebuilding a world that's in harmony with nature. This is our chance to redefine our relationship with the environment, to create a way of life that can sustain us for generations to come. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing trading and economy in our post-blackout world. How do we exchange goods and services without modern currency? If you've established successful trading systems or found innovative ways to assign value in our new reality, we want to hear from you. Your insights could help other communities develop fair and efficient ways of exchanging resources. This is Atlas, reminding you that in this new world, understanding and working with nature is not just a luxury, it's a necessity for survival. Keep observing, keep adapting, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to environmental adaptation. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of rebuilding society: trading and economy in our new world. The global financial system we once knew has collapsed along with our power grids. Paper money and digital currencies have lost their value overnight. Yet, the need to exchange goods and services remains. So how do we trade and assign value in this new reality? Let's start by talking about the immediate aftermath of the blackout. In those first chaotic days and weeks, many communities reverted to a pure barter system. People traded what they had for what they needed: a bag of rice for a box of nails, medical supplies for fresh vegetables. This direct exchange of goods worked in the short term, but it has limitations. The problem with pure barter is that it requires a double coincidence of wants. You need to find someone who has what you want and also wants what you have. This can be inefficient and time-consuming. As a result, many communities have started to develop more sophisticated trading systems. One approach that's gaining traction is the use of commodity currencies. These are standardized, widely accepted items that serve as a medium of exchange. We're seeing a variety of commodities being used, depending on local conditions and resources. In some areas, it's ammunition. In others, it's salt, sugar, or even coffee. The key is that these items have intrinsic value and are durable and divisible. Some communities have taken this a step further and created local currencies. These might be in the form of printed notes, wooden tokens, or even tally sticks similar to those used in medieval Europe. The important thing is that the community agrees on their value and accepts them for trade. If you're considering implementing a local currency, it's crucial to have systems in place to prevent counterfeiting and to manage the supply to prevent inflation. Now, let's talk about the concept of labor as currency. Many communities have implemented systems where work hours can be exchanged for goods or services. This can be particularly useful for people who may not have many physical goods to trade but can contribute their skills and time. Some groups are using labor vouchers, which represent a certain number of work hours and can be traded within the community. It's important to note that different types of labor may be valued differently based on skill level and community needs. A skilled medic or engineer might earn more for an hour of work than someone doing general labor. Each community will need to determine fair rates based on their specific situations and needs. Let's address the issue of long-distance trade. As communities start to stabilize and produce surpluses, trade between different groups becomes more important. Some areas have natural resources or specialized skills that others lack. Facilitating this trade can improve everyone's standard of living. Many regions are seeing the emergence of traveling traders. These individuals or groups move between communities, bringing news as well as goods. They often serve as a vital link, not just for trade but for communication and information sharing. If you encounter these traders, treat them well. Their services can be invaluable. For longer distance trade, we're seeing a return to the use of precious metals, particularly gold and silver. These have the advantage of being compact, durable, and widely recognized. However, be cautious. In the early days after the blackout, many people traded away valuable gold for immediate necessities. Now, as trade systems stabilize, gold is regaining its value. If you have gold or silver, consider holding onto it as a long-term store of value. Now, let's talk about the importance of record keeping in our new economic systems. Without computers and digital ledgers, we need to return to physical methods of tracking debts, credits, and exchanges. Many communities are using ledger books to record transactions. Some are experimenting with systems similar to tally sticks, where debts are recorded by making notches on wooden sticks, with each party keeping half of the stick as a record. It's crucial to have trusted individuals or committees overseeing these records to prevent fraud and resolve disputes. Some communities have appointed trade councils to manage their economic affairs and mediate any conflicts that arise. Let's address the sensitive topic of debt in our new world. Without bankruptcy courts and legal systems to manage debt, communities need to be cautious about extending credit. Many groups are implementing strict limits on how. Some are using systems of community vouching, where someone's debt is guaranteed by other community members. Now, let's talk about the concept of gift economies. In some smaller, tight-knit communities, we're seeing a move away from formalized trade altogether. Instead, people freely share resources and labor, trusting that their contributions will be reciprocated when they're in need. While this can work well in small groups with strong social bonds, it becomes more challenging to maintain as communities grow larger. It's important to discuss the role of specialization in our new economy. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, many of us had to become generalists, learning a wide range of survival skills. But as we stabilize and rebuild, there's value in allowing people to specialize in areas where they excel. This can lead to greater efficiency and innovation. However, we need to balance this with the need for resilience. It's still important for everyone to have a baseline of general survival skills. Let's talk about the concept of community ownership and resource sharing. Many groups have found success with systems where certain resources like tools, vehicles, or even land are owned collectively by the community. This can be more efficient than everyone trying to own everything individually. However, it requires clear systems for managing and maintaining these shared resources. Now, let's address the issue of luxury goods in our new economy. It might seem frivolous to talk about luxuries when we're focused on survival, but as we stabilize and rebuild, people will naturally start to want more than just the bare necessities. We're seeing the emergence of artisans creating jewelry, art, and other non-essential but desirable items. These can play an important role in trade and in maintaining morale. It's crucial to discuss the concept of fair trade in our new world. Without regulations and oversight, there's potential for exploitation, especially in trades between different communities. Many groups are establishing codes of ethical trade, agreeing on fair prices and practices. Some are appointing neutral arbiters to oversee important trades and ensure fairness. Let's talk about the role of information as a valuable commodity. In our post-blackout world, Accurate information about resources, threats, or useful techniques can be incredibly valuable. Some communities are treating information as a tradable resource, exchanging it for goods or services. If you have unique knowledge or skills, don't underestimate their value in trade negotiations. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of resource scarcity and its impact on trade. In areas where certain resources are scarce, we're seeing the emergence of black markets and price gouging. It's important for communities to have systems in place to prevent exploitation while still allowing for the laws of supply and demand to function. Many groups are implementing price controls on essential goods to ensure they remain accessible to all. Let's discuss the concept of trade fairs. As communities stabilize, we're seeing the emergence of regular gatherings where different groups come together to trade goods, share information, and negotiate agreements. These events can be crucial for building inter-community relationships and facilitating larger-scale trade. If you have the resources to host or attend one of these fairs, it could be a valuable opportunity for your community. It's important to talk about the role of trust in our new economic systems. Without legal contracts and enforcement mechanisms, much of our trade relies on trust and reputation. Many communities are implementing systems to track individuals and groups' reliability in trades. Those who consistently deal fairly are rewarded with better trading opportunities, while those who cheat or exploit others may find themselves ostracized from trade networks. Now, let's address the issue of intellectual property in our new economy. In the old world, patents and copyrights played a big role in innovation and creative works. But in our current situation, freely sharing knowledge and ideas can be crucial for survival. Many communities are grappling with how to balance the need to share information with the desire to reward and incentivize innovation. Let's talk about the concept of community banks or resource pools. Some groups are creating centralized stores of resources that can be drawn upon in times of need or used to fund community projects. These might be stocked through regular contributions from community members or from surpluses generated by community-owned enterprises. Managing these resource pools fairly and transparently is crucial for maintaining community trust. It's important to discuss the role of apprenticeships and education in our new economy. With the loss of formal educational institutions, many communities are returning to apprenticeship models for passing on specialized skills. These arrangements often involve a combination of labor exchange and knowledge transfer. If you have valuable skills, consider taking on apprentices. Not only does this ensure your knowledge is passed on, but it can also be a form of wealth generation in our new economy. Now, let's talk about the potential for rebuilding larger-scale economic systems. As communities connect and trade networks expand, we may see the reemergence of more complex economic structures. Some areas are experimenting with representative currencies, where local currencies can be exchanged at agreed-upon rates. This could eventually lead to the development of new regional or even global currencies. Let's address the issue of economic inequality in our new world. The blackout has, in many ways, been a great equalizer, wiping out much of the wealth disparity that existed in the old world. As we rebuild, we have an opportunity to create more equitable economic systems. Many communities are implementing wealth redistribution mechanisms, like progressive taxation systems based on resource ownership or mandatory community service requirements for wealthier members. It's crucial to discuss the concept of sustainable economics in our rebuilding efforts. The old world's focus on endless growth and resource exploitation led to many of the environmental problems we faced. As we rebuild, we have a chance to create economic systems that are in harmony with our environment. Many communities are basing their economic decisions on long-term sustainability rather than short-term gain. As we wrap up this segment on trading and economy, I want to emphasize again how crucial these systems are for our long-term survival and recovery. A functioning economy, even if it looks very different from what we knew before, is essential for efficiently allocating resources and incentivizing the production of goods and services we all need. Remember, every fair trade you make, every innovative economic solution you implement, brings us one step closer to rebuilding a functioning society. This is our chance to create economic systems that are more fair, more sustainable, and more resilient than what we had before. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing future planning and rebuilding efforts in our post-blackout world. How do we move beyond day-to-day survival and start thinking about long-term recovery? If you've started implementing plans for major infrastructure projects or have visions for what our rebuilt society could look like, we want to hear from you. Your ideas could help shape the future we're all working towards. This is Atlas, reminding you that even without banks and stock markets, the exchange of goods, services, and ideas is the lifeblood of any society. Keep trading fairly, keep innovating, and keep listening to Station End Light, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station End Light, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to trading and economy. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of our recovery: future planning and rebuilding efforts. As we've stabilized our immediate survival needs, many communities are starting to look beyond day-to-day existence and think about long-term recovery. This is a critical step in our journey. While we can't simply recreate the world we lost, we have an opportunity to build something new, potentially something better. Let's start by talking about infrastructure. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, we focused on adapting to life without modern conveniences. Now, it's time to think about rebuilding some of that infrastructure, albeit in ways that are more sustainable and resilient. One of the most crucial areas for rebuilding is our power systems. We've discussed small-scale solutions like solar panels and wind turbines, but some communities are thinking bigger. There are reports of efforts to rebuild and retrofit old hydroelectric dams, which could provide significant power to large areas. These projects are enormous undertakings, requiring significant labor and expertise, but they could be transformative for our recovery efforts. Another critical infrastructure need is clean water systems. While we've adapted to purifying water on a small scale, rebuilding larger water treatment and distribution systems would greatly improve public health and free up time and energy for other rebuilding efforts. Some communities are exploring gravity-fed water systems that don't require electricity to operate, making them more resilient to future disruptions. Transportation is another key area for rebuilding. While we've largely adapted to life without cars and trucks, efficient transportation will be crucial for rebuilding larger-scale trade and cooperation between communities. Some groups are working on clearing. Others are looking at reviving rail systems, particularly steam-powered trains which can run on wood or coal. Now, let's talk about communication infrastructure. We've discussed various low-tech communication methods, but as we rebuild, re-establishing longer-range communication will be crucial. Some tech-savvy survivors are working on rebuilding simple telegraph systems using salvaged materials. Others are exploring the possibility of reactivating old analog phone systems, which are simpler and more robust than the digital systems we lost. It's important to note that these infrastructure projects aren't just about recreating what we had before. We have an opportunity to rethink and improve upon old designs. For example, instead of rebuilding a centralized power grid vulnerable to cascading failures, we could create a network of smaller, more localized grids that can operate independently if needed. Let's discuss the importance of education in our rebuilding efforts. We've talked about passing on survival skills, but as we look to the future, we need to think about preserving and passing on the knowledge needed to maintain and advance our technology. Some communities are establishing schools focused on practical sciences, engineering, and medicine. Others are creating apprenticeship programs to ensure crucial skills aren't lost. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of population and family planning. In the chaos following the blackout, many communities saw their populations decrease dramatically. As we stabilize and look to the future, we need to think carefully about sustainable population growth. Some groups are implementing policies to encourage or discourage childbearing based on their resource availability and long-term goals. It's crucial to discuss the role of governance in our rebuilding efforts. As we move beyond small, isolated communities and start to reconnect on a larger scale, we'll need to think about how to structure our society. Some areas are experimenting with new forms of direct democracy, enabled by smaller populations. Others are looking to historical models of federation, where local communities maintain significant autonomy while cooperating on larger issues. Let's talk about the importance of cultural preservation and renewal in our rebuilding efforts. In the struggle for survival, it's easy to lose sight of the arts, music, literature, and other cultural practices that enrich our lives. But these are crucial for maintaining our humanity and passing on our values to future generations. Many communities are making efforts to preserve books, artwork, and other cultural artifacts. Others are encouraging the creation of new art and literature that reflects our post-blackout experiences. Now, let's address the issue of defense and security as we rebuild. As communities grow and accumulate more resources, they may become targets for less scrupulous groups. Many areas are implementing training programs to ensure all community members have basic self-defense skills. Others are forming volunteer militias for community defense. It's a delicate balance between ensuring security and avoiding the creation of authoritarian power structures. It's important to discuss environmental restoration as part of our rebuilding efforts. The blackout has given nature a chance to recover in many areas, and as we rebuild, we have an opportunity to work with these natural processes rather than against them. Some communities are implementing large-scale reforestation projects. Others are working to clean up industrial sites and waterways that were polluted in the old world. Let's talk about the role of science and research in our rebuilding efforts. While we've lost much of our advanced scientific infrastructure, the scientific method and spirit of inquiry are more important than ever. Some communities are establishing research centers focused on practical problems like developing new medicines from local plants or improving agricultural yields. Others are working to preserve and expand our understanding of the natural world, which will be crucial for long-term survival and advancement. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of dealing with the remnants of the old world's nuclear infrastructure. Abandoned nuclear power plants and weapons facilities pose long-term risks if left unattended. Some groups with the necessary expertise are working on safely decommissioning these facilities. This is dangerous work, but it's crucial for the long-term safety of large areas. It's important to discuss the potential for space exploration in our rebuilt world. While it might seem far-fetched given our current circumstances, maintaining some level of space capability could be crucial for our long-term survival as a species. Some visionary groups are preserving knowledge of space technology and even making plans for eventual missions to reactivate or replace the satellites we lost. Let's talk about the importance of disaster preparedness in our rebuilding efforts. The blackout caught us off guard, but as we rebuild, we have the opportunity to create more resilient systems. Many communities are implementing regular drills and creating stockpiles of essential supplies. Others are designing their rebuilt infrastructure to withstand a variety of potential disasters. Now, let's address the issue of justice and reconciliation as we rebuild. In the chaos following the blackout, many people did things they're not proud of to survive. As we stabilize and rebuild, we need to find ways to address past wrongs while still moving forward as a community. Some groups are implementing truth and reconciliation processes similar to those used in post-conflict societies. It's crucial to discuss the role of ethics and philosophy in our rebuilding efforts. As we recreate our society, we have the opportunity to rethink our values and priorities. Many communities are engaging in deep discussions about what kind of society they want to build. What lessons can we learn from the collapse of our old world? How can we create a more just, sustainable, and fulfilling way of life? Let's talk about the potential for new forms of social organization as we rebuild. The breakdown of old power structures and the necessity of close cooperation for survival has led many communities to experiment with new ways of organizing themselves. Some are exploring models of consensus decision-making. Others are implementing systems of rotating leadership to prevent the concentration of power. Now, let's address the issue of mental health and social well-being in our rebuilding efforts. We've discussed coping with the immediate trauma of the blackout, but as we look to the future, we need to think about creating societies that support mental and emotional health. Many communities are incorporating regular community gatherings, music and art events, and other activities that foster social connections and joy. It's important to discuss the role of spirituality and religion in our rebuilding efforts. For many, faith has been a source of strength and hope through these difficult times. As we rebuild, we need to find ways to respect diverse beliefs while avoiding the religious conflicts that plagued our old world. Some communities are creating interfaith councils to promote understanding and cooperation. let's talk about the importance of preserving and sharing knowledge as we rebuild. We've lost so much information that was stored digitally, and we can't afford to lose more. Many communities are creating physical libraries and implementing systems for copying and distributing important books and documents. Others are reviving old techniques like oral storytelling to pass on knowledge and history. Now, let's address the potential for rebuilding global connections. While our focus has necessarily been local, some forward-thinking groups are already planning for how we might eventually reconnect on a global scale. This could involve re-establishing long-distance trade routes, creating new systems for international communication, or even eventually rebuilding air travel capabilities. It's crucial to discuss the role of innovation and technology in our rebuilding efforts. While we can't simply recreate the high-tech world we lost, we shouldn't abandon technological progress. Many communities are encouraging innovation, but with a focus on appropriate technology solutions that are sustainable, reparable, and suited to our new circumstances. Let's talk about the importance of preserving biodiversity as we rebuild. The blackout has given many ecosystems a chance to recover, and as we expand our communities, we need to be mindful of our impact on other species. Some groups are creating wildlife preserves and corridors to protect endangered species. Others are incorporating biodiversity conservation into their agricultural practices. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of population movements and refugees. As some areas become uninhabitable due to changed climate conditions or resource depletion, we're likely to see large-scale movements of people. We need to start planning now for how to handle these migrations in a humane and sustainable way. It's important to discuss the potential for conflicts as we rebuild and expand. As communities grow and start to compete for resources, there's a risk of reverting to the destructive patterns of warfare that plagued our old world. Many groups are working to establish systems of conflict resolution and shared resource management to prevent these conflicts before they start. As we wrap up this segment on future planning and rebuilding, I want to emphasize again how crucial it is to think long-term even as we deal with immediate survival needs. Every seed we plant, every structure we build, every child we educate is shaping the world of tomorrow. Remember, we're not just rebuilding. This is our chance to learn from the mistakes of the past and create a more sustainable, just, and resilient society. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight, but every step we take towards this goal brings us closer to a brighter future. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing the importance of hope and resilience in our ongoing recovery efforts. How do we maintain our humanity and our optimism in the face of such enormous challenges? If you've found ways to cultivate hope and keep your community spirits high, we want to hear from you. Your experiences could inspire others to keep pushing forward, even in the darkest times. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the midst of rebuilding, it's important to take time to envision the world we want to create. Keep planning, keep building, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to future planning and rebuilding efforts. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of our ongoing recovery: the importance of hope and resilience. In the face of the enormous challenges we've encountered since the blackout, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or discouraged, but maintaining our hope and our humanity is just as important for our survival as food, water, and shelter. Without hope, without a belief that our efforts matter and that a better future is possible, we lose the will to keep going. So how do we cultivate and maintain hope in these difficult times? Let's start by talking about the power of small victories. In the early days after the blackout, simply surviving each day was a victory. As we've stabilized, our victories might look different: a successful harvest, a new baby born healthy, a repaired piece of equipment. It's crucial to recognize and celebrate these achievements, no matter how small they might seem. They're proof that progress is possible, that our efforts are making a difference. Many communities have found success in creating rituals to mark these victories. Some hold regular community meals to share the fruits of their labor. Others have implemented systems of public recognition for individuals who've made significant contributions. These practices not only boost morale but also strengthen community bonds. Now, let's discuss the importance of having goals and working towards them. In the chaos immediately following the blackout, many of us were focused solely on immediate survival. But as we've stabilized, having longer-term goals to work towards can provide a sense of purpose and direction. These goals might be practical, like building a new community center or clearing a road to a neighboring settlement. They might be more abstract, like preserving knowledge or creating new art. The important thing is that they give us something to strive for beyond mere survival. It's crucial to involve the entire community in setting these goals. When people feel that they have a say in shaping their future, they're more likely to remain committed and hopeful even when faced with setbacks. Regular community meetings to discuss progress and set new objectives can help maintain this sense of shared purpose. Let's talk about the role of storytelling in maintaining hope and resilience. Humans have always used stories to make sense of their world and to find meaning in difficult circumstances. In our post-blackout world, sharing stories has taken on new importance. Stories of survival, of kindness in the face of adversity, of innovative solutions to seemingly insurmountable problems. These narratives remind us of our strength and adaptability as a species. Many communities have revived the tradition of gathering around fires in the evening to share stories. Others have implemented regular story circles, where community members can share their experiences. Some are even working on creating new mythologies that reflect our post-blackout reality while incorporating lessons from our past. Now, let's address the importance of maintaining connections with others. Isolation can be a huge threat to hope and mental well-being. Even if physical distance separates us, finding ways to connect with other survivors and communities is crucial. The knowledge that we're not alone in our struggles, that others are out there facing similar challenges and working towards similar goals, can be incredibly heartening. This is one of the reasons why communication infrastructure, even if it's as simple as a network of runners carrying messages between settlements, is so important. Every connection we reestablish, every bit of news we share, helps us feel part of a larger human community. Let's talk about the role of music and art in maintaining our humanity and our hope. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, these might have seemed like luxuries we couldn't afford. But as we've stabilized, many communities have recognized the vital role that creative expression plays in our mental and emotional well-being. Singing together, creating visual art, performing plays. These activities remind us of our humanity and our capacity for beauty even in difficult circumstances. They provide an emotional outlet and a way to process our experiences. Many communities are actively encouraging artistic expression, setting aside time and resources for creative pursuits. Now, let's discuss the importance of humor and playfulness. It might seem counterintuitive to talk about fun in our current circumstances, but laughter and play are powerful tools for maintaining resilience. They release tension, boost mood, and can even strengthen social bonds. Many communities have implemented regular game nights or sporting events. Others have designated community jesters or encouraged the sharing of jokes and humorous stories. Remember, finding moments of joy and laughter doesn't mean you're not taking your situation seriously. It's a sign of resilience and a vital coping mechanism. Let's talk about the role of learning and personal growth in maintaining hope. Even in our changed world, the human drive to learn and improve ourselves remains. Many people are finding hope and purpose in acquiring new skills, whether it's learning to grow food, mastering a craft, or studying the stars. Communities that encourage this kind of personal growth often find that it contributes to overall resilience. When people feel that they're continually learning and improving, it fosters a sense of progress and possibility. Consider implementing skill-sharing workshops or community classes in your settlement. Now, let's address the importance of maintaining physical health in relation to hope and resilience. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, and adequate sleep all contribute significantly to our mental and emotional well-being. When we feel physically strong and healthy, we're better equipped to handle emotional challenges. Many communities are incorporating regular physical activities into their routines, from morning group exercises to community sports leagues. Others are placing a strong emphasis on nutrition, not just for survival but for overall health and well-being. Remember, Taking care of your physical health is an important act of self-care and a way of maintaining hope for the future. Let's discuss the role of nature in fostering hope and resilience. Many survivors have reported finding solace and renewal in connecting with the natural world. The resilience of nature itself, the way plants push through cracks in concrete, the return of wildlife to areas once dominated by human activity, can serve as a powerful metaphor for our own capacity to adapt and thrive. Encourage your community members to spend time in nature. This might involve tending gardens, taking walks in wild areas, or simply sitting quietly and observing the natural world around you. Many find that this connection with nature provides a sense of peace and perspective that helps them face the challenges of our new world. Now, let's talk about the importance of forgiveness and letting go. In the chaos following the blackout, many people did things they're not proud of in order to survive. As we work to rebuild, carrying the weight of guilt or resentment can be a huge drain on our emotional resources and a barrier to hope. Many communities are implementing forgiveness rituals or reconciliation processes to address past wrongs and allow people to move forward. Remember, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing harmful actions. It's about freeing ourselves from the burden of anger and resentment so we can focus on building a better future. Let's discuss the role of spirituality and faith in maintaining hope. For many survivors, their spiritual beliefs have been a crucial source of strength and resilience. Whether it's organized religion, personal spiritual practices, or a sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, spirituality can provide comfort and meaning in difficult times. Many communities are creating spaces for diverse spiritual practices, recognizing the importance of this aspect of human experience. Even for those who don't consider themselves religious, practices like meditation or philosophical contemplation can provide valuable tools for maintaining perspective and hope. Now, let's address the importance of envisioning a positive future. While it's crucial to be realistic about the challenges we face, it's equally important to be able to imagine a better world that we're working towards. This vision gives meaning to our daily struggles and helps us persist in the face of setbacks. Consider organizing community visioning sessions where people can share their ideas for the future. What kind of world do we want to create? What lessons have that can guide us moving forward? Having a shared vision of a positive future can be a powerful source of hope and motivation. Let's talk about the role of leadership in fostering hope and resilience. Leaders in our communities have a crucial responsibility not just to manage resources and make decisions, but to inspire and motivate. A leader who can articulate a vision of hope, who can remind people of their strength and resilience, can have a profound impact on a community's ability to face challenges. If you're in a leadership position, remember the importance of this aspect of your role. And if you're not, consider how you can support and encourage your community's leaders in this vital task. Now, let's discuss the importance of recognizing and honoring our losses. Maintaining hope doesn't mean ignoring the very real pain and grief that we've all experienced. In fact, acknowledging our losses can be an important part of building resilience. Many communities have created memorials or implemented regular rituals to remember what and who we've lost. These practices allow us to honor our past while still moving forward. They remind us of our strength, that we've survived tremendous losses and are still here, still fighting, still hoping. Let's talk about the power of helping others in maintaining our own hope and resilience. When we're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed, one of the most effective things we can do is to reach out and help someone else. This not only provides a sense of purpose and connection, but it reminds us of our own strength and capability. Encourage a culture of mutual aid in your community. This might involve formal systems like volunteer programs, or it might be as simple as encouraging people to check on their neighbors regularly. The act of helping others can be a powerful antidote to feelings of helplessness or despair. As we wrap up this segment on hope and resilience, I want to emphasize again how crucial these qualities are for our long-term survival and recovery. Hope isn't just a nice feeling. It's what gives us the strength to keep going when things get tough, to keep working towards a better future even when progress seems slow. Remember, every time you choose hope over despair, every time you pick yourself up after a setback, every time you reach out to help someone else despite your own struggles, you're contributing to our collective resilience. You're helping to ensure that humanity not only survives this crisis, but emerges from it stronger and wiser. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing the importance of community and cooperation in our ongoing recovery efforts. How do we build and maintain strong communities in the face of scarcity and hardship? If you've found effective ways to foster cooperation and resolve conflicts in your settlement, we want to hear from you. Your experiences could help other communities grow stronger and more resilient. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in the darkest times, the human spirit has an incredible capacity for hope and resilience. Keep believing, keep striving, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we're continuing our broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a wide range of topics so far, from basic survival needs to hope and resilience. Now, let's turn our attention to a crucial aspect of our ongoing recovery: the importance of community and cooperation. In the immediate aftermath of the blackout, many of us found ourselves suddenly isolated, cut off from the complex social networks we once relied on. But as we've begun to stabilize and rebuild, we've rediscovered an essential truth. Humans are social creatures, and our strength lies in our ability to work together. So how do we build and maintain strong communities in the face of scarcity and hardship? Let's start by talking about the importance of clear communication within communities. In our new world, where resources are scarce and every decision can have significant consequences, it's crucial that everyone feels heard and informed. Many successful communities have implemented regular town hall meetings where all members can voice their concerns and participate in decision-making processes. Some groups have found success with consensus-based decision-making, where discussions continue until a solution is found that everyone can accept, if not fully agree with. While this can be time-consuming, it often leads to decisions that have strong community support and are more likely to be successfully implemented. Now, let's discuss the role of shared labor in building community bonds. When everyone contributes to the community's survival and improvement, it fosters a sense of shared purpose and mutual reliance. Many settlements have implemented systems of rotating work assignments, ensuring that everyone takes turns with both the desirable and less pleasant tasks. It's important to recognize and value all types of contributions. In our new world, traditional measures of worth have been upended. The ability to grow food, repair equipment, or provide emotional support can be just as valuable as leadership or technical skills. Successful communities find ways to acknowledge and appreciate all forms of contribution. Let's talk about the importance of conflict resolution mechanisms in maintaining community cohesion. Even in the best-run communities, conflicts will arise. Having clear, fair processes for resolving disputes is crucial. Many groups have established mediation councils, comprised of respected community members, to help resolve conflicts before they escalate. Some communities have revived traditional practices like talking circles, where each person has a chance to speak without interruption, fostering understanding and empathy. Others have implemented restorative justice practices, focusing on repairing harm rather than punitive measures. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of resource allocation. In a world of scarcity, deciding how to distribute limited resources can be a major source of conflict. Successful communities have found that transparency is key. When everyone understands the full picture of available resources and the reasoning behind distribution decisions, it's easier to accept even difficult choices. Many groups have implemented systems of community input for major resource decisions. This might involve community-wide votes or elected resource committees. The important thing is that people feel the process is fair and that their voices are heard. Let's discuss the role of shared spaces in fostering community bonds. In our pre-blackout world, we often took public spaces for granted. Now, we're rediscovering their importance. Many communities are prioritizing the creation and maintenance of shared areas, community gardens, meeting halls, or simply a central square where people can gather. These spaces serve multiple purposes. They provide areas for community meetings and shared labor, but they also offer opportunities for casual interactions and shared leisure time. Never underestimate the community-building power of a shared meal or a game played together after a hard day's work. Now, let's talk about the importance of rituals and celebrations in maintaining community cohesion. In times of hardship, it's easy to become solely focused on survival. But taking time to mark important events and celebrate achievements, no matter how small, is crucial for community morale. Many settlements have established regular festivals tied to the agricultural calendar, planting celebrations, harvest festivals, and so on. Others have created new rituals to mark uniquely post-blackout milestones, like the anniversary of their community's founding. These shared experiences help create a sense of collective identity and shared history. Let's address the issue of integrating newcomers into established communities. As people continue to move in search of safety or resources, many settlements are grappling with how to welcome new members while maintaining community cohesion. Successful integration often involves a balance of expecting newcomers to adapt to community norms while also being open to the new ideas and skills they bring. Some communities have implemented sponsorship systems where existing members vouch for and help integrate new arrivals. Others have created formal orientation processes to help newcomers understand community expectations and find ways to contribute. Now, let's discuss the importance of education in building strong communities. We've talked before about the practical aspects of education in our new world, but it's also a powerful tool for community building. Shared learning experiences can create bonds across age groups and help transmit community values to younger generations. Many settlements are reviving the idea of community schools, where education is seen as a shared responsibility rather than something delegated to specialized institutions. This might involve community members taking turns teaching their areas of expertise, or children learning alongside adults in practical, hands-on settings. Let's talk about the role of mutual aid networks in fostering community resilience. In our resource-scarce world, the ability to call on others for help in times of need is crucial. Many communities have formalized systems of mutual aid, where members pledge to help each other with tasks like childcare, home repairs, or care during illness. These networks not only provide practical support, but also strengthen community bonds. When people know they can rely on their neighbors in times of need, it creates a sense of security and belonging that's invaluable in our uncertain world. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of leadership in our new communities. Strong leadership, challenges we've also seen the dangers of concentrated power. Many successful settlements have found ways to balance the need for decisive action with participatory decision-making. Some have implemented systems of rotating leadership, where responsibilities are shared and shifted regularly to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power. Others have created checks and balances, with different aspects of community management handled by separate groups that must cooperate and reach consensus. Let's discuss the importance of intercommunity cooperation. While much of our focus has necessarily been on building strong individual communities, our long-term survival and ability to rebuild on a larger scale depend on our ability to work together across community lines. Many regions are seeing the emergence of community councils, where representatives from different settlements meet regularly to discuss shared concerns and coordinate efforts. These might deal with issues like managing shared resources, organizing mutual defense, or coordinating larger-scale infrastructure projects. Now, let's talk about the role of diversity in building resilient communities. In our pre-blackout world, we often took for granted the benefits of having access to diverse skills and perspectives. In our new reality, this diversity can be a matter of survival. Communities that embrace and value diverse skills, backgrounds, and viewpoints often find themselves more adaptable and innovative in the face of challenges. Successful settlements find ways to encourage this diversity while still maintaining community cohesion. This might involve actively seeking out individuals with needed skills during recruitment, or creating systems to ensure diverse perspectives are included in decision-making processes. Let's address the issue of maintaining community morale in the face of setbacks. No matter how well organized a community is, we all face challenges and failures in our post-blackout world. The ability to come together and support each other during these difficult times is a hallmark of truly resilient communities. Many groups have found success with communal grieving rituals, allowing people to acknowledge losses and setbacks together. Others focus on rapid community response to crises, with established protocols for how everyone can contribute when things go wrong. The key is fostering a sense that no individual or family has to face hardship alone. Now, let's discuss the importance of storytelling and shared narratives in building community identity. The stories we tell about ourselves, our origins, our struggles, our aspirations shape how we see ourselves as a community. Many settlements are actively working to create and maintain these shared narratives. This might involve designating community historians to record important events, or regular storytelling sessions where members share their experiences of the blackout and its aftermath. Some communities are even creating new myths and legends that encapsulate their values and experiences in our changed world. Let's talk about the role of trade and exchange in fostering intercommunity bonds. While we've discussed the practical aspects of trade before, it's also a powerful tool for building relationships between different groups. Regular trading meetups not only allow for the exchange of goods, but also of information, ideas, and cultural practices. Many regions are seeing the emergence of regular trade fairs, where multiple communities come together to exchange goods and strengthen ties. These events often include cultural exchanges as well, with music, storytelling, and shared meals helping to build bonds that go beyond mere economic transactions. Now, let's address the sensitive topic of justice and accountability in our new communities. Without the formal legal structures we once relied on, maintaining a sense of justice and ensuring accountability for harmful actions is a challenge many settlements face. Successful communities often find ways to balance the need for consequences with a focus on restoration and reintegration. Some have implemented community tribunals, where accused individuals face a panel of their peers. Others use circle processes, bringing together the accused, the harmed parties, and the broader community to find ways to repair harm and restore balance. The goal is often not punishment for its own sake, but finding ways to maintain community safety and cohesion. Let's discuss the importance of shared goals and visions in maintaining community cohesion. When everyone is working towards a common purpose, it can help overcome individual differences and foster a sense of unity. Many successful settlements regularly engage in community visioning exercises, working together to define what they're striving for beyond mere survival. These shared visions might involve long-term infrastructure projects, educational goals, or aspirations for how the community will grow and change. The important thing is that they give people a sense of working together towards something larger than themselves. As we wrap up this segment on community and cooperation, I want to emphasize again how crucial these aspects are for our long-term survival and recovery. In our changed world, no individual or family can thrive alone. It's through our connections with others, our ability to work together and support each other, that will not only survive but begin to rebuild and thrive. Remember, every time you reach out to a neighbor, every time you contribute to a community project, every time you work to resolve a conflict peacefully, you're strengthening the bonds that will see us through these challenging times. Building strong communities isn't just about survival. It's about creating a new way of life that in many ways may be richer and more fulfilling than what we lost. Stay tuned, survivors. Up next, we'll be discussing the challenges and opportunities of rebuilding on a larger scale. As our communities stabilize and grow, how do we start to reconnect and rebuild the larger structures of society? If you've been involved in efforts to reestablish regional governance or large-scale infrastructure projects, we want to hear from you. Your experiences could help guide our collective efforts to rebuild our world. This is Atlas, reminding you that even in our changed world, our greatest strength lies in our ability to come together and support each other. Keep building those connections, keep fostering that spirit of cooperation, and keep listening to Station Endlight, your beacon in the darkness. Welcome back to Station Endlight, survivors. This is Atlas, and we've reached the final segment of our extended broadcast on survival and rebuilding in our post-blackout world. We've covered a vast range of topics, from basic survival needs to community building and hope for the future. Now, let's conclude by reflecting on our journey so far and looking ahead to the challenges and opportunities that await us. When the blackout first struck, many of us thought it would be temporary. We waited for the lights to come back on, for some semblance of our old lives to return. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, we've had to face the reality that the world as we knew it is gone. Yet here we are, still surviving, still fighting, still working to build something new from the ashes of the old. In the immediate aftermath, our focus was on basic survival. We learned to purify water without modern technology, to find food when grocery stores were emptied and supply chains broken. We figured out how to stay warm without central heating and how to defend ourselves and our loved ones in a world where old systems of law and order had crumbled. But survival alone is not enough. As we've stabilized our immediate situations, we've turned our attention to rebuilding. We've had to relearn old skills and develop new ones. We've created new systems of governance, new methods of trade, new ways of educating our children and passing on knowledge. Throughout this broadcast, we've shared stories of ingenuity and resilience from communities across the region. We've heard about innovative solutions to problems our ancestors never had to face, and we've been reminded of the wisdom in traditional practices that our pre-blackout world had largely forgotten. We've discussed the challenges of agriculture in our new world, where industrial farming is no longer possible. Many of you have shared success stories of permaculture systems, of rediscovering heirloom crop varieties that thrive without chemical inputs, of integrating livestock into small-scale farming in ways that benefit both the animals and the land. We've talked about energy and technology, about the efforts to salvage and repurpose what remains of our old infrastructure. Some communities have managed to get small-scale solar or wind power systems running. Others have revived older technologies like water wheels or steam engines. We're seeing a fusion of old and new, as innovative thinkers find ways to meet our energy needs with the resources at hand. We've explored the challenges of maintaining health and treating illness without the advanced medical systems we once took for granted. Many of you have shared knowledge of herbal remedies and traditional healing practices. We've heard about communities coming together to care for the sick and injured, about the revival of midwifery and other hands-on healing arts. We've discussed the importance of education in our new world. Without formal schools and universities, we've had to find new ways to pass on knowledge and skills. Many communities have implemented apprenticeship systems, where young people learn directly from those with experience. We've heard about the creation of community libraries, about efforts to preserve and copy important books, traditions, about the pass on history and cultural knowledge. Throughout all of this, we've emphasized the crucial importance of community. In our pre-blackout world, many of us lived relatively isolated lives, connected more by technology than by face-to-face interactions. Now, we've rediscovered the strength that comes from true community, from knowing and relying on our neighbors, from working together towards common goals. We've talked about the challenges of governance in our new reality. Without the large-scale government structures we once knew, communities have had to develop their own systems for making decisions and resolving conflicts. We've heard about experiments with direct democracy, about the revival of consensus-based decision-making, about the challenges and rewards of taking an active role in shaping our communities. We've explored the emergence of new economic systems. Without banks and digital currencies, we've had to find new ways to trade and assign value. We've heard about the use of barter systems, about the creation of local currencies, about communities experimenting with gift economies. We've discussed the challenges of balancing individual needs with the common good in a world of limited resources. Throughout our broadcast, we've also addressed the psychological and emotional challenges of life in our post-blackout world. We've talked about coping with loss and trauma, about maintaining hope in the face of tremendous adversity. We've shared strategies for mental health and well-being, recognizing that taking care of our minds and spirits is just as important as meeting our physical needs. We've discussed the changes in our natural environment since the blackout. Many of you have reported seeing wildlife returning to areas long dominated by human activity. We've talked about the challenges and opportunities this presents, about learning to coexist with nature in new ways. We've explored how the cessation of industrial activity has affected our climate and ecosystems, and how we might work with these changes as we rebuild. As we look to the future, we face both daunting challenges and exciting opportunities. The world we're rebuilding will not be the same as the one we lost, and in many ways that's a good thing. We have the chance to create something more sustainable, more equitable, more in harmony with the natural world. But the path forward won't be easy. As our communities grow and stabilize, we'll need to grapple with larger scale issues. How do we rebuild infrastructure like roads and communication systems? How do we handle interactions between different communities, especially when resources are scarce? How do we begin to address the environmental damage left behind by our old way of life? These are big questions, and we don't have all the answers yet. But what gives me hope is the incredible resilience and creativity I've seen in all of you. Time and again, when faced with seemingly insurmountable challenges, human ingenuity and determination have found a way forward. As we conclude this broadcast, I want to leave you with a few key thoughts. First, never underestimate the power of community. Our strength lies in our connections to each other, in our ability to work together and support one another. Continue to build and strengthen those bonds within your communities and between different groups. Second, remain curious and open to learning. Our world has changed dramatically, and we need to be ready to adapt. The skills and knowledge that served us in the pre-blackout world may not be what we need now. Stay open to new ideas, be willing to experiment, and never stop learning. Third, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. While our day-to-day focus may be on immediate survival needs, it's important to keep in mind the kind of world we want to create. As we rebuild, we have the opportunity to address many of the problems that plagued our old society. Think carefully about what you want to recreate and what you want to leave behind. Fourth, take care of yourselves and each other. The challenges we face are not just physical but mental and emotional as well. Make time for rest, for joy, for connection. Support those who are struggling. Remember that our humanity, our capacity for compassion and creativity, is our greatest strength. Finally, hold on to hope. The road ahead is long and often difficult, but we've already come so far. Every day that we survive, every small victory we achieve, is a testament to our resilience. We may have lost the world we knew, but we haven't lost our ability to create, to innovate, to care for one another. As we move forward, we'll continue to broadcast as often as we can, sharing news, information, and stories from across the region. If you have information to share, if you've made discoveries or developed innovations that could help others, find a way to get that information to us. In this new world, knowledge shared is power multiplied. Remember, you are not alone. Even if you can't see or hear them, there are others out there, facing the same challenges, harboring the same fears, nurturing the same hopes. We're all in this together, and together, we will find our way through this dark time and into a new dawn. This is Atlas, signing off for now from Station and Light. Stay strong, stay hopeful, and keep listening. We'll be here, a beacon in the darkness, for as long as we're needed. Until next time, survivors, take care of yourselves and each other.